Exactly. Come on, man. Step it up.
Okay.
All right.
One added note for you, Slim. I'm putting a link in the sidebar. You are welcome to go there and tune in, and just listen once you're off air.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody, for watching. I really appreciate the viewership. I've got at least 2 new subs that I got notifications for today. So for Agrippa and Fat Fortog, thank you very much for subscribing. I really appreciate you guys. I'm sitting right around 130 subscribers for a channel that started out in April with 2 subs. I have grown farther and faster than I ever thought possible, and I really appreciate the support from everybody. You guys are great. Admittedly, I built most of my channel on kicking G-Man in the balls repeatedly. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I hope that this has generated something a little more substantial and a little more worthwhile, something that will kind of stand the test of time a lot more. That's probably the rum talking, though. So, as far as everything goes, the guys in this chat produce excellent content. Shadow or 13 Shadows, aka Shadow Heathen, good channel, hosts a lot of great discussions.
Actually, oh well, sorry.
Especially when the Insomnia Shuffle was active, good, really good stuff. I definitely recommend subbing to him. Max, aka the Catholic Fusionist, follow him on Twitter at the same handle. Large amounts
actually
of
the Catholic. So the handle is at Catholic Fusion I, Catholic Fusion, and then just a small case I.
There we go. But yeah, follow him on Twitter for no small amount of savagery. Do you do YouTube under that handle too?
The Catholic Fusionist is my YouTube channel.
Okay. Yep. Then absolutely do that. For Saint Brucifer, he's been ramping up the G-Man game quite a bit lately.
I don't have anything. Yeah, I kind of really laid off. Only one video up right now.
For Saint Brucifer, as far as comment wise, you kicked him in the balls pretty hard earlier this month, which was great.
Yeah.
And generally all around good content. Sokka don't do much as far as his own content goes, but whenever he jumps into a hangout, it's very, very worthwhile, although he has probably the most annoying D&D character I've ever encountered.
My character's amazing. You knock the social justice wizard.
Steven,
social justice wizard?
It's a long story. We'll get into it off air. Steven runs probably one of the better free speech-oriented Discord servers I've ever come across. Not exactly alt-right, but it's edgy as fuck. It's called American Heresy. Message either myself or him for an invite to it, and we'll probably let you in.
To clarify, there is no political sway to that particular server.
Yes.
The individuals on the server have a sway, and the server itself is a 100% free speech absolutist environment. You can say whatever you want. You won't be punished for it, though you will have to listen to other people's opinions of it, and they may be happy or not, but
Be as communist as you want, be as libertarian as you want, be atheist as fuck, be Christian beyond belief. We're all there, and you'll just have to deal with the two of us.
Pretty much.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Ned, why don't you plug your own content, man, since you are the reason this hangout happened in the first place?
Well, that's tough to do considering I hadn't made anything in 2 years, but...
Sub to the dead channel.
Exactly. Now
we're going to need to have somebody given mods so we can show people that are hidden.
Everybody has mods.
Okay. There we go. Now he's unhidden. I didn't. That's why I was mentioning it. But sorry. Go ahead. Didn't mean to interrupt.
It's all right. Now, I mean, the only thing I do consistently is Good and All on Sunday nights with Christopher Mowdy. Sokka's on there quite a bit, and I mean, we talk about all kinds of stuff. It's definitely not religious focused, and which I really enjoy.
Are you talking about the Good and Alls?
Yeah.
Excellent channel.
Yeah, that's about the only thing I've done that's been consistent lately. And unless I get, I don't know, challenged or I get pissed off at somebody and challenge them to talk, I'm not around enough for anybody to even keep track of that much. But if you like what I do, go to my channel. I've got a bunch of old debates with everybody from
Holy
Jason
shit,
Byrne
man.
all the way back to Matt Slick and a bunch of other, let's say, interesting individuals. So.
There's a lot of really good classic stuff out there too. I actually had to dig something out of the proverbial dumpster to stream earlier. It was kind of fun.
Yeah, exactly. That's always fun. And me and you being around as long as we have, Shadow, it's always interesting. I hear you, man. So.
Well, thanks to all of my to my panelists, thanks to my viewers. And in closing, I just want to share one thing. And this is for anybody who says that Slim never preaches the gospel ever. Y'all motherfuckers need Jesus. Have a good night.
Hoorah!
With a slice of, I don't know, cheese. I don't know.
You know, I really do enjoy the good and all talks, because like it's like those places where it's one of those places where you can completely disagree with somebody for like political and ideological reasons, but like we're all friends, so like there's not a lot of like I hate you now and I'm never going to talk to you again type thing. So that's always good.
That's kind of what I was hoping to do with this hangout, right? Is like people who just like, I think from the ideological divide, Ned and I come from different places, but we managed to have a good discussion anyway. In fact, I was tempted to title this talk, or this particular episode, "How to Talk to Atheists," but I thought drinking with Slim was slightly less provocative, so I went with that.
Especially if you're looking for subs, clickbait isn't a bad thing. So.
That's true.
That's real. I should have plugged my Quora profile. I'm like a overnight sensation on Quora. I have, if you've ever heard of the site, like in the first month I used it, my answers got 25,000 views.
Nicely done.
And yeah, it goes up by about 1,000 a day.
That's awesome.
Apparently, the shit I say is worthwhile reading, I guess.
There's a reason I'm in your server and I follow you on Twitter.
There are kind of moments when stuff hits like that. There's this kind of moment that it's like, why me? What the heck's going on here?
You know, you're gonna have G-Man flipping out. You guys were talking about uppers and lowers, and what you talk about tank tops and bikinis, or what the heck are we talking about?
Well, I'm not expecting the follow-up to get many viewers because people are going to notice that G-Man's flipping out again or something. I don't know. I saw he was one of the many people streaming right now. I think MP was as well. So
yeah, I was competing with MP and Gary the Barrel Stacker, but I think my peak viewership was 18.
Jesus Christ. What kind of name is that?
With all that going on, 18's pretty good, man.
I will say that. I will say this much. I, if anything, maybe G-Man will talk about my sex history or the lack thereof.
Oh, Drag's live too, so that's probably why my viewership started dropping off.
Hang on, Epi, I have a question. Are you attracted to women?
Yes.
Then you're a lesbian. G-logic.
Well, I don't know, dude. So I always said I was a butch dyke trapped in a male's body.
Who the hell
is not the rum talking?
And why do we care?
Hang on. Here we go. Fix that.
It's just within this stupid corner of the internet. There's a guy that he's kind of an anomaly. Thank you. In the sense
you've been drinking as much as I have.
I have
an anomaly.
Anomaly. Yeah. Anyway,
hang on. I'm just curious as to who just joined. Is that Prudent?
Don't hang on me.
I just want to know if it was Prudent that joined or somebody else, man.
You can ask him afterwards. Fuck.
Okay.
What the fuck is happening right
now? No, but he's a guy that is encompasses every single worst racial characteristic of black people, as well as every single worst characteristic that you would apply to a fundamentalist Christian, rolled into one. And then you combine it with the fact that he has the learning curve of a goldfish, and
whoa,
he's really stupid. That it's this guilty pleasure to watch his content and be like, what could possibly be wrong with this guy? And I have this ongoing thing where I go into his room on occasion every once in a while.
You're going to need an ATF permit for the ball bat you're swinging there.
yeah. But
Listen
he.
to this guy fucking go.
Charity
Okay,
is
Learning
dumb as shit.
curve of gold.
I mean, but like, I think that like, let's just put it this way: the way that I just described him was kind compared to how most of the people in this room probably would.
It was, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd prefer not to talk about him in general.
Yeah,
But in any case,
yeah.
that
So
It's hard to quantify the sheer stupidity that this man possesses.
yeah.
by the way,
So what I do is I as a challenge to myself is when he starts talking about relatively complex topics, I try to go in there and see if I could break him down to a level that he actually understands. So, like, what we'll do is we'll take like a topic on moral philosophy that might take several hours to dive into, and I think to myself, how can I break this down in 60 seconds to explain it to my 9-year-old? And then I try to use that on G-Man and see how much he actually gets, and he fails every single time, or I fail in my delivery. Who knows?
No such thing as a bad.
It could get
I'll say you're the teachers.
Hey, Ned.
Has an intelligence equal to that of a 9-year-old. I mean, I'm pretty sure I've given him before infant.
it's
You did say the learning curve of a goldfish, which means that like the term curve is kind of being used colloquially here. I mean,
I know,
technically
but
it would be a
learning curve
curve,
implies
but it's going to look pretty flat, like until you get way,
Yeah, I know.
way.
I mean, it's just like a learning curve means that you have to be able to learn. I'm not sure that he has.
Hey, Ned, you remember what I
This is
said
why
at the
that's funny.
beginning of our hangout where I said there's no such thing as a bad student, only a bad teacher?
Oh yeah,
That's
There are bad students.
Yeah, well, I take it back.
Living proof
That
that
is
bad
bad.
students exist.
oh yeah, they're all over the place.
Oh
And-
shit!
I wanted to mention I was kind of see what you guys think of this, but I was getting kind of concerned. And this is kind of why I started laying off my videos and stuff. Was that I kind of was wondering, I mean, as far as people sending them food and of course not paid for, that kind of thing, and wanting to send them gifts, calling them at the, and I kind of get it in a way. I mean, he's making videos at work, bugging, screaming at people, calling them names, whatever the heck he's doing, and all kinds of crap. But it just seemed like it was going kind of bad. And then I had a guy come in, he was telling me on one of my hangouts how they plan on doing more. I thought, hell, I mean, there's a point where, what I actually got concerned about? I'll just tell you. I thought, well, I don't know if somebody would actually hurt the guy, but let's say he was really scared. And somebody did show up out of nowhere to give him a bunch of shit, and he freaking went to defend himself, I wouldn't talk about this if it wasn't off air, but,
We are on, dude.
It says off air right there.
Yes, I know what we're on.
Why the hell is it on if it's...
We're on. We're being broadcast on my channel right now. Granted, it's not like Gio will ever look at it, but that's okay.
Wait, we're on air.
Yeah, when I put the link on the side, I was saying that that we're continuing there. But
I
that's
didn't
okay.
know. Well, anyhow, so...
I mean,
Now that
you
I
get no
said
fight out of me. I don't give a fuck who hears the words of my
Now that I
voice.
just said that, please, let me just say that, yeah, that's actually a concern of mine. So, G-Man, if you fucking watch this, look, dude, you've lied about me a number of times. I've actually tried to defend your ass. I wish I wouldn't have talked about
A
this.
lot of us have tried to defend him, whether we should be or not, and it's at the point that a lot of us are like, no, enough, done.
Well,
Wait, hold on a second, guys. Yeah, guys, hold on a second. You've reached the end of a rope when you're literally running out of room inside of Christian in-group preference.
Yeah.
The Christians got some of the nastiest in-group preference, man. Like, you can see, like some Christians burn all the faggots and stuff, and it's like, and they'll be like, hey, man, that's not okay. I'm sorry. He just gets like this, dude. We can't go out in public anymore. You're gonna talk like that. We can't do it. Like, and they're both Christians, so he's just gonna be like, listen, dude. Like, I understand, but no, that's not okay. But if you're running out of the room, with Christian in-group preference, you're doing something really wrong. Like, you're really pushing a fucking limit.
So basically, what we're saying is that after 3-4 years of putting up with this crap, we're finally taking the kids' gloves off.
No, 5-6 years.
Oh, 10.
But, yeah, I was
No,
gonna say,
actually, not quite 10, but yeah, it's about 7.
At this point, though, I hardly care.
the reality,
I don't care. I mean, I'm only invested in it because of the goals that I get from it.
That's true.
The only
watching
problem-
the most recent videos, he's not going to. Here's the sad part: he's not going to stop. I look at his newest videos, I go, holy heck, man, this dude is still freaking going at people. Like, yeah, kind of stuff.
Here's the thing. People have been giving him way too much slack for way too long, and around the time that Drag and I started calling him out. And don't take that like me feeling that I'm the center of this, because I'm certainly not. He put himself at the center of this. He completely put himself at the center of this. But at that point, it was like, okay, let's see if we can get him to consider changing his ways. And he refused to. He's gotten even more vicious and vindictive. I mean, he's just a horrible person. He seems to be beyond redemption. And you can urge that as much as you want. But, I mean, I even went so far as to make the argument, because, mind you, this was in the middle of Strokes. That I actually started having compassion and made my call-out videos and all this other stuff. And he didn't listen to me. He didn't listen to fellow Christians. He refused to listen to anyone. And then, bam, he has a problem with his back. This could have been a decent argument for God. The problem is that the argument for God would require him acknowledging that he was a piece of crap and needed to change his ways.
Nah.
Well, and the problem with sending him all that stuff, as hilarious it is that it plays to his hand. It gives him the ability to now come on and cry and act like he's the victim again, which, I mean, it just takes away from what he's doing and gives him a way to shift the light to somebody else. That's the only reason I don't like it.
It's uncool. It's not fair to... It's not the right thing to do to take it outside of YouTube. It's also not right to to use a company and the driver who's losing money, just for someone to.
Well, I mean, Greg, and recently, like in most of his videos, I think almost all actually, he said if you're going to send G-Man something, make sure you pay for it.
Yeah, and I've also...
No, you shouldn't do it, though. It shouldn't be done.
Well, sure, but...
Hang on. The thing is, if you're going to send him a frickin' pizza at work, pay for the darn pizza. That's what it comes down to. And the people responsible, I've talked to them on an aside after figuring out who some of them were and who some of their spokespeople are, and say, dude, if you're going to send stuff to him, freaking pay for it. I get that you want to troll, and I'm not trying to tell you what you must do, but at the same point... a certain level of decency here, because otherwise you're just feeding him in his dialogue.
Wouldn't a certain level of decency be to leave it on YouTube? I mean, seriously, leave it on YouTube. Don't bring it out in the everyday life. I mean, that's really should be the difference. The line should be right there.
Well, you would think he would have figured that out, right?
Hang on.
Playing that on him.
Hang on, if I can for a moment. Here's the thing: what happens is when you go around. Who am I getting feedback from?
Not me.
Oh well. Let me make sure that I have the external. Yeah, I have the external meter. I don't know what it is. Well, in any case, when you go around antagonizing so many different people in so many different groups, you're going to get blowback like this. It's only natural. And when you are somebody that's sitting there broadcasting, that's contributing to basically trying to get him to break down at this point more than anything else, to the point that he realizes that his actions are bad and he needs to do something about his behavior on here. What's going to happen is people will rally behind that notion, and the people that are kind of there at the forefront of it have to pull on the reins, saying, guys, calm down, please don't do this. Now, the people that are somewhat loyal followers of you, yeah, you can get them to curb their behavior a little bit, but the people that are doing it because they've been watching him for years and are sick of it themselves and have been, there's nothing you can do to prevent them, especially when he keeps doxing himself.
Well,
that's further, but don't. I don't know that. At least for me, I'm not going to agree with it, even though the dude will sit there and talk about people lying, and then I see him lying. I don't know. Probably to me, the most bizarre thing. Some stuff I know he's lied about other people, but I'm sure most of you guys know that when he lies about you personally, and you know the truth, you go, "Wow, I guess dude has no problem lying."
And the thing is, Bruce, is that I'm convinced beyond the shadow of reason that he has no sense of self whatsoever.
He has no what?
No sense of self.
Yeah, no. I'm going to go ahead and chime in, talking about shit I know nothing about, because if you're not going to be good at something, the least you can do is be entertaining about being bad at something.
Yeah, now, you're kind of distant from your mic, by the way.
I don't know how I can be closer. It's like right here, but hey.
He turned his mic up in the.
Yeah, I'll do that. Give me a second.
I already maxed him out.
Ah.
Let me reposition my thing here. This better?
Yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
1,000 times better.
So, I mean, like, I don't know about this guy's temperament too terribly well, but I can tell you that some people, this is sort of the gift of tradition. The gift of tradition is knowing that, you know, fire is dangerous, and if you fuck with it, you may not feel too great afterward. Now, some people are really good at picking up on the fact that it's bright, it's shiny, it's warm if you get close to it. You get too close, it's a little too warm. And then they don't do that because it's pretty straightforward what's going to happen. Other people, you may notice, because they will have varying different markings that suggest they have discovered that these things don't feel too great after, you know, entanglement.
Well-
Need to be harmed before they understand the virtue of reasonable behavior. Now, I'm not saying they should be. I'm just saying that unless you're going to impugn upon this individual's free will, they may end up using that free will to, we'll say, instruct themselves live rather than in simulation. Now, is it a good idea? Of course not. All of us are sitting here going, listen, dude, you're going to a place where, I mean, I don't want to speak for you, but you probably just don't want to go. But if the person isn't going to listen to reason, whether they have self-value, whether they have self-respect, that's no longer relevant. What is relevant is their behavior given the circumstances and the relevant factors. And if that behavior doesn't change, then they're bound to experience something really effing negative. And there isn't anything that good people can do about that beyond saying, yo,
guys, please don't cross these lines, pretty much, yeah.
Well, the issue...
Beyond that, experience is the world's most potent instructor.
Yeah.
The issue with that, though, is that it's disanalogous because, like, with a child touching a stove, you know, a child touches a stove, once they do that, they know not to touch it because the stove is hot. G-Man, on the other hand, you know, doesn't take accountability for him being the one that touched the stove.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He blames the stove for burning his hand instead of himself for touching the stove.
Well, to correct the metaphor here, because that is practically absolute, but there's one slight variation, and that is that when a child touches a hot stove, there is no way to misrepresent the touching of that hot stove. It hurts like a son of a bitch. It's real clear.
Yes,
if there's a circumstance in which this dude is touching a hot stove and somehow not burning himself, then he's figured out one hell of a formula. Clearly, he isn't actually touching the hot stove yet. He's just flirting with it. Eventually, he will touch the hot stove, and he will feel a bite that don't feel great. And it may be just a big anticipation project until such a time takes place. At least it'll be on video, so everybody will have a great thing to refer back to.
I'm going to sneak in with a slightly different variation of the analogy.
Oh, sure, go ahead.
Years and years ago, I had a rabbit. The rabbit's name was Poe. He was a cute little bunny that looked kind of like an 8-ball. And every once in a while, we'd let him out of his cage, and he'd hop around. And one day, he hopped over to where the little light cord was. And he bit the light cord, and it stung. So what he did was he shook his little head and stared angrily at the light cord, and then lunged forward and bit it again. We had to take him away after he did this the 4th time because the stupid rabbit kept going after that damn light cord. That's kind of analogous to what we see in this guy.
This is I have to admit,
that's the best rabbit story I've ever heard.
I just have to say, a dog unfortunately can do that.
Yo!
But in general, I just wanted to mention this so that I've never had a dog outside where, like, you know, cooking on the grill or have a little fire pit or something where the dog would bark at getting burnt when it got, or getting too hot when it got close. It wouldn't bark at it. The dog would eventually learn that it can't go there because that made its face hot.
It would learn.
Nice.
That out, you know?
Yes, it has the capacity to learn. It is officially smarter than G-Man.
I know, it's a shame, isn't it? Yeah, man.
I just want to point out that it is absolutely amazing that Steven, having never encountered G-Man before, ever, described him perfectly.
That's the thing, isn't it? I mean, most people that describe G-Man on their first encounter with him are like, yeah, this guy is... They list out certain attributes, and then, you know, when they go to drag, it's like, oh yeah, well, you know, this is kind of what we've observed for several years now.
Fucking nailed it. But on that note, guys, I need to get some shut-eye, because
get your shut-eye, man.
As late as I want to stay up, the kids don't. So,
Yeah.
But hey, thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for participating. Thank you for everything. You guys are all pretty awesome, and I really appreciate your support.
That's the booze speaking, but
Can I leave
okay.
on a positive note?
Yeah.
Should I leave a positive note with you, though? At least a dog is smart enough to lick its dick clean, you know?
Oh, dude, we don't need a positive note. We switched to another channel. We're good.
Yeah.
Jim, thanks again, man. This was fun. Anytime.
Yeah, I'll try to do a hang like this at least once a month. I'll try to rotate the interesting people that I will be interviewing, but eventually, yeah, we'll try and open up the room and carry on like this. And Shadow, if you are willing to simulcast, but by all means, man.
Yeah, I can always just take over. It's a thing.
Yeah. So, hey guys, have a good night.
Have a good night, man.
Hang on, one more thing. Do you have Kevin Buchik on your list?
Yes, I do.
Okay, talk to him about access to the corporate account.
Okay.
He'll hook you up. I put him in charge of the sub account.
Awesome.
Snipe proof and max capacity of 25 people.
I'll keep that in mind.
And it looks a bit different, but yeah, you'll have to have a streaming software. But anyway, regardless, I think you already have that. Have a good night, man.
I'll just begin to like warp around the edge of the stream.
One other thing, if you see people who you do not recognize at all show up, I posted the link in Steven's Discord server.
Oh, dude, so, you have control. You have cameraman on. We're good.
Okay, cool. All right, have a good night, everybody.
Night.
All right. Good night.
Yeah,
So wait, Epi left a while ago, didn't he?
Whose was this?
Epi. It looks like he left.
Yeah, he left a little bit ago. Yeah.
Okay, because I'll have to wait for him if he ever comes back. Because yesterday, before the England-Croatia game, he sends me this little Facebook message taunting me, saying how England's going to win.
Kind of, yeah.
They didn't.
Forward faster rather than... And they get like a big two-handed broadsword.
Two-handed broadsword. I don't have one of those. Oh, wait, never mind. You're muttering.
There's a great...
No, I've got the L Cid, I've got the katana, and I've got my showpiece, which is not visible in the background.
Oh, nice. My camera's not working. I'm not actually seeing video on any of you guys' thing. I'm not entirely sure.
Okay. I heard you saying something about broadsword. I have a Scottish blade on the wall behind me here. I thought you might have been commenting about that.
Legit. No. My buddies and one of the... really my best friend and the guy who co-runs the Free Speech Absolutist server that I have with me just came over, and he'd never seen my Titan on Destiny 2 before.
Huh.
And he rocks a two-handed sort of broadsword thing.
Well, you probably got my son's attention. I think he's in his room listening in.
I actually have I have two katanas. One is a if you've ever heard of the Chenis cutlery, it's specially designed for what's called dojo cutting, which is where you cut tatami mats, etc.
The reeds, yeah.
Yep. So it's specially designed for that. It's much heavier. It's a very wide, thick blade made of 9260 spring steel. It's really nice.
Spring steel is actually pretty good. The only thing sturdier than that is the T10 machine, which is what mine is. But mine's also not a katana, strictly speaking. It's I can never remember the name of it. It's something complicated. It's basically the hilt of it is about as long as my arm. So,
a dai katana.
Out of or what steel? The something 20 spring steel or I just
okay.
9260 spring steel. It's a steel that uses lots of I think it's lots of silicon.
Wait, which steel is it? What's the number?
It's normally just referred to as spring steel.
No, I can't hear the number. I'm asking for the number. What was the number again?
9260.
9260.
Yep.
Well, I'm not familiar with that. Huh. Interesting.
Hey, real quick, guys. I just jumped back in to ask you all a quick question. If you haven't seen it yet, kindly would you go to my channel and watch the video Big Enough for Pinhead? It's the first non-G-Man related meme I've made, and I desperately want your feedback.
I saw it earlier. I have not looked at it yet. Yeah, my first thought, though, was, are you talking Pinhead in terms of the Hellraiser series?
Yes, it is an homage to one of my favorite memes and my favorite horror series.
You just don't watch the last two. Oh my gosh, they were bad. Anyway,
Wow.
Yeah, the
6
last
and
two
7s were
questionable.
terrible.
Though I do have, let's see, so I have another 9260 spring steel job that's just a garden variety traditional katana, usually somewhere between the actual traditional katana length and the wakatsashi length. I prefer shorter blades, and I have a D10 tool steel warhammer.
Yeah, T10 is a great material. It really is, and it has almost all the flexibility of the spring steel, while being a little bit stronger in terms of impact. I mean, this thing theoretically could cut through about a 2-inch branch as long as it's softwood.
That's bizarre.
Yeah.
I'm saying that it's tougher than 1050, and to me, 1050 is a pretty darn soft steel. I mean, it's similar to what you'd make an axe head or something out of.
Okay, spring steel
Right.
is what, when you're talking about like the springs, for example, that they use in the suspension of cars, it's the same kind of metal, basically.
All right, I understand, but
T10,
also,
on the other hand, the T stands for tool grade. It's a tool grade metal mine.
right, so much of it has to really do with it. I mean, I understand the steel and the amount of carbon in it and different elements has a lot to do with it, but then again, the heat treatment, what they do to it, and the heat treatment total probably plays the biggest part, I think.
Well, there's actually a lot more to it than that. Hey, let me see if I can find the link for
No,
you.
I'm saying that the biggest part is the temper. Granted, you can only do so much with certain steels depending on what you have to work with. But when you heat treat it, that is probably the most important in making a blade.
Yeah, I've heard that the way you quench the steel has a great deal to do with the way the steel behaves in general.
Absolutely.
I've noticed.
Going to
Water quenching has
temperature
one
and-
effect, and I've heard some of the best effects are drawn from clay quenching.
Well,
I've heard lots of really good things about clay
there's a
quenching.
reason for that, but a whole lot of it has to do with you have to know what steel you're working with, what its critical temperatures are, and then how to temper that particular steel or how to quench it, and then after that to draw it out to put it exactly where you want it. You know what I mean?
Okay, this isn't actually the
no,
link
you're
I was
right.
looking for, but it does have but if you look around their page, you will find information on the different steels.
Well, yeah, I played with it some.
Yeah, you guys ever heard of Wootz Damascus?
Damascus, yeah.
Well, specifically Wootz Damascus.
I've not heard of
it's a
Wootz
different type of
Damascus,
treatment.
but
It's super crazy. There's a guy who runs a shop. You may have heard of it. I know it's nationally well known. Angel Sword.
oh yeah, I'm familiar with Angel Sword. Yeah,
Yep. Yeah, those are the most expensive swords I've ever seen. Like $3,000-$4,000 a piece.
Wow.
And
yeah. I've gone to their booth at Scarborough Fair, I believe it was.
Yep, I go to the Renaissance Fest in my state. I live in Minnesota. Has one of their stores too. Just incredible quality steel. Apparently, it's proprietary. The guy invented it himself. Met the guy personally. Is really interesting dude. But
That's
yeah,
weird
crazy stuff.
Don't you think? I mean, it's odd that for certain applications, bending it and folding it and folding it and folding it, it makes certain things really great, but it doesn't work well for everything. It's weird.
That's true.
Well, when you're folding something like the T10, the fold is just an aesthetic. It's nothing else.
Right. Well, what I mean is, for instance, it wouldn't make a good razor blade, but it does do. Well, you know what I mean.
That's really relevant, though. That's really relevant. Yeah. Well, because like the concept of most war blades is to withstand the hit of another blade, right?
Right.
And so you want to make sure your steel can take steel on steel contact, and then secondarily hold a really good edge.
Absolutely.
If it can do both, all the better.
It's such a different world than typically. That's why I was asking about the steel, because
There it is, steel comparison page.
Most of my interests are very different than sword making,
Oh, for sure.
But yeah, it has to be able to handle so many different stresses. And where I've sharpened Damascus steel, and you go, wow, this is neat stuff, but great for slicing, but push cutting, it's like you can get it really nice. Don't get me wrong, but it's not like a super fine carbide steel where you can push cut through tissue paper when you're done. You know what I mean?
Bruce,
for sure.
Bruce, that second link I put up there is actually a discussion on the different kinds of steels on that page.
Yeah.
That is a crazy valid point. Yeah, like the unfortunate truth of the use of blades in combat is that they must take a hit. If they didn't need to take a hit, Jesus Christ, you could make a 4-foot-long scalpel and call it good.
Right.
Like,
holy
crap.
Yeah, I mean, the crazy thing is you can be sitting there working with a straight razor, and it can be beautiful until you drop it on the sink, just from like
until you
high,
drop the sink,
and it's destroyed. Where you take a machete and you could slam it into it nearly, and it would dent it. Maybe bend it, depending on how it's tempered, of course, in the steel. But yeah, it's interesting.
But yeah, that has all the information you should need in terms of how it works. There's a lot on there talking about the different tempers and what have you, and the carbon content.
I'll look at that, but I mean, to be honest, I haven't looked at it in years. But I mean, I used to enjoy fooling around with stuff, and I don't know. Yeah, it's forever learning. I got playing around with axes and found that was really interesting, and I'm still kind of obsessed with a lot of Swedish-made axes, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's funny you mention axes because I've found a really good modern, a really good modern usage for all kinds of Damascus steel. I've discovered is knives and axe heads. Those are really cool looking. I mean, even just for the aesthetic, they're really nifty. I have a Damascus steel karambit. Looks just amazing.
Oh, that is cool. Yeah, I've got
polished, almost mirrored.
Oh, by the way, the term I was trying to remember earlier is nagamaki.
Nagamaki, roger that.
Did you ever hear of like Gransfors Brooks or Wetterlings or axes like that?
I've heard of Wetterlings. I've never heard of the other guy. I also have a really nice Damascus tracker's knife, the kind from the movie Hunted.
I know what I have in Damascus now that I think about it. A couple things, but I do have an old Buck 110. If you're familiar with that,
yeah, buck knives, man. Those used to be the thing. Every man had one.
I have one that's probably made in the 70s. Maybe it was 80s by that time. But it's a Damascus blade custom shop kind of thing. It's kind
my dad. I still have my father's buck knife. I mean, it's just like a store-bought one. It's nothing crazy, but.
Yeah, Buck makes masonry from time to time. You wouldn't think that a company like that would make. They make some really wild stuff, I guess, occasionally. The Buckmaster is a really cool knife that kind of a military type of thing.
Yeah.
Real interesting.
Guys, it's after midnight here. I'm going to go ahead and bow out. Thanks again. And yeah, definitely.
I'm also going to hop, gentlemen. It's been pretty awesome, but I got company and I got stuff to do, so. Otherwise, I would stick around. But I will be available on my Discord, all the other fun stuff. If you guys ever want to join, as Slim said, links down there. And hopefully I'll be chatting with you guys in the future.
Yeah, definitely, man.
The link is down there on the original Slim video, which is linked down below. Go and watch the source where we bounced from at some point if you'd like.
Exactly.
Yep, indeed.
Shadow.
Copy that. Stay free, gentlemen.
Yeah, Shadow, really good to see you're doing well again, man. I'd really like to see you. I'm really glad to see you're back. So
I'm working on it. I'm supposed to be doing videos, working on book 3, but I'm not quite ready yet, unfortunately, and I keep trying to push myself in that direction. But fuck it.
How have your symptoms been?
Keep going, brother. We need you definitely.
Okay. Yeah. Take care, man. Good night. Well, Prudent. The best way to put it is that my right and left hemispheres are not cooperating. They don't seem to want to communicate with each other, so I'm going to have to rebuild a bridge, literally.
That sounds actually pretty bad.
Yeah, it's interesting. This last one did some weird stuff with my vision. I don't know. There's a part of me that's like, strokes suck and they're bad, but there's a part of me that's like, I'm learning so much about how the mind works from, as opposed to just reading about it, just internally. And puppy, why you go, bugger off.
You mean like neurobiology, how synapses function and whatnot?
Yeah, I'm learning a bit about that, but learning firsthand in terms of the experiential part of it is much more interesting on some levels than, just reading about it. And I apparently have to feed the dogs. They're being annoying. One moment.
Got a new little doggy actually at my house right now. He's actually been pretty good.
Yeah, they're whining at me. They were apparently out of water again.
Yeah, he's always happy to see me when I get home from work in the morning. every time he's always just pouncing like right off of my. He always jumps up and then pounces right off of me. He does that like 2 or 3 times. It's nice.
I'm really glad my dogs don't do that. They're a little bigger.
Hey, I was looking at this Shadow Heathen. I'm wondering, what do you? I saw that they had 1095. What do you think of that?
It breaks really well.
Really, it's an inexpensive steel, and typically,
and there's a reason for that. There's a reason for that. The spring steel is much sturdier and will last much longer if you're messing with it at all. They do actually have some videos. Let me get.
Well, what I mean is outside of sword building. As my point is, at 1095, it's a very common steel, but it's pretty high carbon content. It's the highest of the 10 series steels.
Yeah, but it's more than just the carbon content. If you go through their page, it actually gets into it quite a bit. Hang on, let me.
I'm not seeing that though. I didn't
show newbie in there. There should be. I remember there being some talks about it pertaining to that, and I think I found them through their page. Incidentally, welcome person that just joined.
Well, but honestly, I've taken 1095 and I've pounded it through logs. Like I've taken a knife and split, like even 10-inch logs.
But when you're talking things like katanas, you have the concern pertaining to flexibility, and it's not as flexible as spring steel.
No, and that's why they only take it to like what is it, like Rockwell 58 or something. Like they're not going to go past that. I mean, but even so, it's about 1/4 of an inch thick. So, but you're right. Yeah, you can't be bending it, and when you get into a knot or something, yeah, and if it's cold in the winter or something, yeah, you can break stuff. It's kind of iffy trying to decide how to make it something hold an edge versus beating it to death, And in a sword, I guess, is much more important, of course,
Yeah, I mean, if you go to the medieval era, most of the damage swords was doing was ultimately blunt damage more so than actual bladed.
Yeah, well, that's what I was thinking. There's a big difference between building a sword and even a survival knife. They seem to be considerably different in how they think. They have
different metals are better for different things. I'm like with a katana, what have you. You need that flexibility.
Right.
So
hello.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was saying hello. I was invited by Slim Jim, and yeah, my name's Anu Vlad.
Hi, glad to meet you.
And what you guys talking about?
We talk about a bunch of different stuff. Nothing, don't really have a central topic yet. I just want. Oh, Shadow, I sent the link for the Hangout in Discord. If that's all right.
I really don't care.
Okay.
This is just a continuation from what Slim was doing earlier, and that's where the interesting conversation was. And as usual, once the official goes off air, everything shifts. It's just the way it goes.
Yeah.
Not too worried about it.
I've kind of changed. If you haven't noticed, I've changed my icon just recently. I'm going to have this for the next few days.
Yeah, and I interrupted, I think it was Saka, to try to verify that was actually you.
Yeah, that was, this is the Croatian flag. Croatia literally just made it to the World Cup final, so I'm a little excited.
Yeah, well, you didn't bet on it now, did you?
No, I didn't. Should have.
If you'd bid on it, if you were going to bid on it, I know some folks, but anyway.
Yeah.
Granted, it's not properly it's not proper gambling, mind you. It's cryptocurrency gambling.
Yeah, I've been watching a lot of these games with my Croatian grandfather. He's been enjoying that time because he's really into it. I only like soccer around the World Cup time, but yeah, my mom's side of the family is Croatian, and everybody in the family is.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah. Really excited.
Oh, Shadow Heathen, I needed to apologize for you for the hangout the other night, the way it went. I knew it went astray real fast, and I was kind of like, I got to go to bed anyhow. So what the heck,
Yes, Mike O. Here you go.
So I hear you guys were talking about katanas apparently earlier.
Yeah, I have technically it's a makamashi, I believe is the pronunciation. There we go, and I will pull that. There we go, and let me show you on broadcast. There we go. But yeah, I have my toy basically. A while ago when I had a little bit of a windfall, I said, "Screw it!" So went to a company and had them forge me a little bit of a toy here.
You said, Maiko, here you go, that rhymed. And actually, this is kind of a blessing in disguise because I asked a while ago to see your beautiful blade. So this is awesome.
This is my toy, and as I said, the handle's a little long. Now, the point of this is so that you can actually maneuver it easier, because it's technically like a 3 or 4-handed weapon in terms of the actual length there. So you can actually wield it fairly well in a narrow hallway or what have you if you needed to.
Did you say 3 to 4-handed?
Yeah.
Weapon? So mutants can or no, I'm sorry.
Well, it's 3 or 4-hand is based upon the length, so you can choke up all the way or down.
I know. I was giving you crap. Sorry.
So yeah, somebody with Hulk hands could actually wield it. Granted, with Hulk hands, it'd probably be one-handed with the new Hulk movies, but hey.
So in other words, G-Man needs 12 hands.
Trump needs 42. So hey.
Is that a laminated or that's a solid one-piece steel?
Oh, the steel? It's one piece.
Oh, that's a functional blade. I can look at.
It's full going all the way down. And all the way down to the tang.
The tang. What was what steel did you say it was? T something?
T10.
And what's the? If I'm asking, like, is that harder than?
I sent you the link earlier, man. Look on the page. It's got it listed on their T10.
Okay, I was just asking you. I didn't know if you knew or not.
I don't have it memorized.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
That's why I was like, look, that's why I put the link out there so I don't have to memorize this stuff.
Yeah, what I saw when I got there was that, like with 1095, 1050 stuff like that, they're not talking about it. They're just showing what they have available in it. Is what I saw. Maybe I'm wrong.
Scroll down. Let me bring it up on my end here. If you scroll to the bottom there, it should have the comparisons at the bottom there. Let me actually, seeing as I just brought up another window, I should probably pop it over here so people know what I'm looking at. Screen cap, there we go. I'm putting this out there for the sake of the external. I would have to change my camera internally. Let me do that right quick. Let's see. There we go. That should do it, more or less. If I can get this. Okay, here we go. Okay, now it actually does have the carbon content listed here for the varied steels up by the top there. But when you scroll down to the very bottom here, it has that's the clay tempered and the folded clay, and it should have them all down there.
Right.
There you go. Carbon content 99% for the 1095 and 1% for T10.
Yeah.
Sorry, 0.9% versus 1%.
Yeah, pretty close.
But yeah, it's got it.
Probably makes it a little bit easier to sharpen too. I don't know. I imagine. Or
yeah.
If you want to sharpen it.
It's tool grade steel. It's supposed to be the ideal steel for it. It has most of the flexibility of the spring, as well as having the strength of your highest carbon. So.
Yeah, I have a good friend who actually makes functional knives, like cooking knives and shearing. For filleting and stuff. Like he sells them to chefs and stuff like that. And he uses stuff that's got a carbon length for it because if he goes any higher, he has to charge people $300 a knife. And unfortunately, that's
well, in terms of getting the strength of the blade with the length, the longer the blade, the harder it is to get it really stable. And especially seeing as it's one piece of metal, the Nodachi. Yeah. Actually, if you want a Nodachi with T10, you're shit out of luck. They're just going to make it with spring steel because getting the blade that length and reliable, it's really hard to do apparently with an Nodachi length.
Well, something that other guy was talking about was, like where they when you cool it, that you would just dip the edge in first, and like they talk about, their clay and tempering. There's a lot of things. I guess the point is that you don't want the whole blade. Trying to think, the edge you want to be somewhat hard, but wouldn't you want to have more ductile ability, throughout the main blade so that it's not, when it flexes, it doesn't crack?
The thing is, the blade does flex instead of cracking. They actually have some videos. They do have their own web page, and they have some videos on that page of them bending it pretty freaking severely. And I think they were doing it with the spring steel.
Right,
on that one.
That's what I mean, though, is at the very edge, though, may be a little bit harder than, say, the spine coming down the back, right?
Well, the spine and the central core of it is a lot harder. The blade is actually crafted almost individually in terms of that's kind of the last step of it, is narrowing it down to the blade.
You're talking the very edge, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but the spine is, you're talking like and coming down the main section of the blade, but the very edge, they typically temper a little harder though, or no?
It's the same tempering process.
The whole way through the whole blade, like from the spine right to the edge?
Yeah.
Depends on how they, yeah, I guess.
There are videos discussing the general process, but yeah.
That's what I was going to say. I mean,
It's there's a little bit difference between blacksmithing processes for like straight tang swords, like European swords, versus Eastern swords. Which is kind of illustrated,
but also when you're dealing with something like T10, they don't actually bother with a folding process on that because of the natural strength of the metal. The thing to keep in mind is that back in the day when they were initially making these swords, they had to go through extensive amounts of tempering and and folding and what have you to get the same kind of strength that we can get with modern metals.
I wonder what would happen if they made used S30 or S90V or something like that to try to make a sword. You know, I think it would maybe be too brittle.
I don't know. I'd have to look it up.
Or D10 or something like that, you know.
Basically, I went to several pages and looked up to see what the optimal metals were, and then trusted their judgment.
Oh yeah. Usually do, yeah.
I wanted a lovely
everybody
little toy.
knows. Everybody knows Shadow is like a PhD in metallurgy. No, I'm just kidding.
Actually, I wish I freaking was. Years ago, back when they had, I guess it's King Richard's there up north, there was a guy that kept going there that was looking for apprentices, and I went there on 3 different occasions to try to meet the guy to talk him into taking me on, and I never caught him.
It takes a dear amount of patience, from what I hear, just to even like learn, you know, and then actually after, you know, it's like Luthier, like a violin designer. Like you build a violin, and after you make one that you think, okay, this is perfect, they break it over their knee and they start over. That's wrong.
Well, I do actually know somebody that runs a forge that does the whole Scarborough Fair thing, but it's nothing compared to something like Angel Forge or something like that. Yeah. But this guy that I was trying to hunt down was an artist. This guy used meteorite metal and other stuff that he'd put into the blade, and he actually made one that he referred to as Sling. Brain fart. That he referred to as Sting, that actually had phosphorus in the blade, so that the thing would actually glow.
When there's orcs around?
No, not when there are orcs around. Just
I was like,
no. It's like the material that they put into clocks to make them glow after they've been exposed to sun long enough during the day.
Oh, like H3, like tritium, or
something like that. I don't know. All I know is the same stuff from the clocks, but he figured out a way to work it into the blade, so it actually had glowing runes if you left it out all day.
You mean like the luminous stuff you see on watch hands, that kind of thing?
Yeah. That's pretty like they actually put it in gun sights too, like where it's lit halfway. You can actually that's fully lit in total darkness. Yeah, tritium. It's like 23 millicuries of nuclear material. It's like just below chemical. Yeah, tritium. The chemical symbol is H3.
Yeah, the thing that's unique with tritium is it'll stay for like 10 years or so.
At least I think the half-life, yeah.
Right, where the luminescence, I can't think of the proper name for it, that they use on watches and that kind of thing in modern days. The only drawback is you have to charge it in the sunlight or some type of bright light. You know, where tritium, in the middle of the night, man, and it works, you know.
Yeah, it glows whether you light it or not.
I don't know what his full process was, but it was truly a piece of art. It was gorgeous.
Pretty wow.
And I'm like, okay, I'd love to learn under this guy. This would be incredible. And as I said, I never caught up with him down there. I made, I think, 2 or 3 trips down during the time period that I heard he was down there looking for apprentices, but I never caught up with him.
Yeah, I have a friend that made a katana, and he used 50-60 spring steel for it, and it's pretty nice. Yeah, it's not bad.
I think the hardest part about it is getting the angle of the back of the blade and then curving that. You know, it's just like it's a simple. There was a documentary I watched a long time ago. It was on the History Channel. It was talking about the perfect combat weapon for fluidity of flow. They were comparing the axe to the bastard sword to, I think, a maul. And the katana won just based on fluidity and curve. So because you could turn in your motions. Because like with an axe, you swing, and then you have your potential energy after one swing, and you have to go again. Whereas with a katana, you can pivot the blade and begin your same motion with the same amount of exertion. Anyway, it was a while ago, but I mean, I thought it was interesting because it was just simply talking about how the katana blade, based on its sharpness, lightness, and spread of the field of damage it can cause, compared to all the weapons they talked about, medieval weapons or basically blunt metal weapons, was the best.
Technically, a saber normally wins out over a katana.
Oh, you mean like a Arabian, say, like a...
Kind of like the kinds that they give to like Marines and what have you, the proper saber.
Oh, okay. So yeah. Well, the curvature there is there, so yeah, I guess, yeah.
I think the idea, though, that you have the ability to use two hands, I guess it does depend on how strong you are, but I kind of like that idea. I think it's kind of neat.
Yeah, but that's a fighting technique, and if you haven't learned the fighting technique, it's not going to do you much good.
Well, I think that might be the difference, because the saber has the hand guard, right, where you can't exchange hands on a turn or a pivot, whereas with a katana you can just exchange hands, flip it, do an Obi-Wan Kenobi twirl. I don't know. Yeah.
I think the twirl was that Sith, Darth Maul.
Yeah.
I tell you, though, that movie always bothered the heck out of me, because when I was first watching it, I'm like, okay, what's the learning curve on trying to learn to use a laser weapon that has two sides? He should have cut himself to shreds just trying to learn it.
It's funny, because I actually met Ray Park at a convention. I asked him about it. He put on a demo, and he said, I had to demonstrate two techniques. In the first act, I used a straight saber, which I used like a I can't remember what it was called. It wasn't a katana. It was like a practice katana. Mm-hmm. And then he said in the second half, I showed him bow staff skills, and then I had to revert back to it when Ewan cut my sword in half. And I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Well, in that chamber where Ewan cuts my sword in half, I had to revert back to it, and I still had to make my maneuvers and my acrobats the same maneuver." And the guy is down to earth. He'll talk to you like left and right. Like, it was amazing, because he actually hosts like a clinic or whatever like that to learn how to.
He's apparently a big deal in the martial arts community. That's all I know.
Oh yeah, he's really good. Yeah.
Well, I can nerd out an explanation as to why a Jedi or Sith could use a double-bladed lightsaber without cutting themselves.
Go for it.
So effectively, the Jedi, which I think this is lightly explained in Episode 1 somewhat, they're renowned for their high reflexes, but the thing is that their reflexes aren't really high in any, like, they don't really have high reflexes. They have precognition. So ultimately, whenever you're using a lightsaber, when you're fighting with it, like any lightsaber, you're going to know where that blade is going to end up well before you go to make the move. So basically, that's one of the benefits. That's actually why it is that a Jedi can use a lightsaber, whereas if you gave a normie the lightsaber, they would have issues with it. Is merely for the fact that
that's fine for regular lightsaber, but the issue that I have with a two-sided lightsaber in particular. And I'm not even talking like the one in the new movie with a handguard or anything like that, but in terms of that two-ended lightsaber with the length of those ends, I'm sitting there thinking about trying to learn how to use a three-section staff, or even nunchucks for that matter. How many times you bop yourself upside the head? I'm like, okay, that's going to be a horrible learning curve.
Yeah, well, you would have to, as far as my understanding, part of learning how to use a lightsaber is effectively honing that precognition. So yeah, I mean, like, it would be kind of weird to, like, if you're going with the Star Wars explanation, it would actually be harder than it would be for a normal person.
Well, and I remember reading, like, and this was non-canon, but it was based on a testament of the skills of Obi-Wan. Whereas, I mean, it's not even but when he took on General Grievous, he was going against a more or less a cyborg who was spinning lightsabers toward him, and his precognition was fast enough to where he could anticipate any spin, disarmed him twice, and then killed him. And actually, I think, did he?
Yeah.
So
it's not horrible. Didn't he shoot him or what?
So
yeah, he shot him.
My RPG, the role-playing game that I devised, it basically be like combat empathy.
Yeah.
Well, being able to anticipate what's coming.
Yeah.
I wonder
that's
how much difference there is in, like, going out and working in the yard, though, like, with machetes, that kind of
Yeah.
No, I'm serious. I mean, how much difference is there between going out chopping wood and cutting down weeds and clearing the fields, doing, just basic things?
No, yeah. I wasn't patronizing you. I was just saying the weeds.
Oh, no, I mean,
the weeds don't fight back. Was my point. I mean,
Well, I would say that the biggest difference, regardless of anything else, is that most people will sit there and use a machete like a baseball bat, and that's not how you use a sword.
No, my point is that when you go out and it depends on the length of machetes you have and what. Anyhow, there's a big difference to me in actually putting things to use and working with them, or doing martial arts, whatever you're working with. But when you actually have the object and you're not just playing with toys any longer, you're actually using it. I do think you learn how things work, how they bounce off things, how they go through things, how to work with follow through, that kind of thing.
Did Haru just open up a bottle or something? What was that? That was.
What's that?
I heard a.
Yeah, I did too. Yeah.
Anyway, this is why people generally practice with padded weapons as opposed to live weapons.
Right. But when you actually take a similar object and you go out and you work with it and practice with it to do your basic work, I mean, that's where all these tools came from, though, isn't it? Or so many of them. They
some of them, but not as many as you might think.
I would think that's where the martial arts would have came from more than the weapon.
Yeah.
But the use of it, though, is my point. I think the learning.
Actually, from I'll just say this briefly. From an anthropological perspective, if you think about like rock tools that they'll shape and form, I'm not talking about arrowheads. I'm talking about blunt objects where they'll form the curve. They didn't put, and this is kind of an interesting point. They didn't put a handle on it until they realized that they could actually make an adhesion to the rock. So in other words, if you talk about realistically, not, and I'm only speaking to this because, life imitates art imitates life, where they'll take a rock to use it as a tool and then only realize, hey, this is blunt and heavy enough where I can use it as a weapon. Then to gain distance from their enemy, they'll add a handle to it. So if you think about that in terms of a tool developing into a sword, there is some efficacy there. So
the handle also comes from not wanting to cut your own hand on it.
Well, true. Yeah, valid.
Valid
point.
But in terms of, if I may, right quick, in terms of things like farm tools and this and that, most of them didn't initially use metal. It was more like sticks put together, and the metal came later as they started learning. But even then, most of those farm tools would have been far too heavy and far too unwieldy to be used in proper combat, which is why they had to start being pared down and redesigned to be practical weapons.
Well, there's a reason they didn't use wood axes for combat.
Obviously.
Well, in Minecraft they did, but it took more. I'm sorry, that was.
Well, one of the more efficient weapons in the medieval era was actually things like the hammer pick.
Mm-hmm.
Because
the can opener.
Yeah, because it was a frigging can opener. You got it. There's actually, back in the day when they had Dragon Magazine connected with Dungeons and Dragons ages and ages ago, there was this little joke cartoon they put in there. There was, the knight's worst weapon. It has a picture of a dragon the knight's worst fear, and it shows a dragon with a can opener.
It was interesting.
That's awesome.
Harry, you were mentioning about how, like a lot of people use a machete like a baseball bat, and I'm probably lost somehow. I'm missing it somehow. But what do you mean? Somehow I'm not picking it up exactly.
There's a difference between trying to cut brush with a machete, because if you're trying to, for example, cut down a small tree versus brush, you have to use slightly different techniques to do it. Well, when you're cutting brush, when it's just simple brush that you're cutting, you can take wide, broad swings, and you're going to do the job just fine. But when you're trying to remove individual branches from the tree, then there's a different angles you need to use. You need to use a different amount of power. But a lot of people, when you see them pick up a sword for the first time or this and that, the way that they swing them, they might as well be trying to swing at a baseball.
Where would I learn? I'm trying to think. There's probably somewhere I could learn about that, though. I'm thinking, As far as how to actually use a machete, I'm thinking it's
Well,
gotta be
machete's a little bit easier and a little bit kinder, but if you want to learn things like swordplay and this and that, then of course you have things like fencing that you can pick up. There's also, of course, martial arts, which teach other weapons as well. Back in the day, when they would have been teaching the military to be using weapons, they'd be teaching them how to like redirect a blade while you're swinging and what have you, which is not something you'd normally see with a machete.
Yeah, there's like an X zone that you can, you swing up and to the right. From that position, you can immediately swing down and to the left. And then if you spin, you can do basically there's a giant X in front of you. Whereas when you're talking about a machete, you're not aiming for any particular human joints. You're basically clearing brush. You don't have to aim for any part of that tree except for any, XY axis appendage that basically just clears the way. Whereas in combat, I think I could be wrong, but Heather, is that
it's kind of where you're going there. And this is the thing is when you're trying to get branches off of a tree. Now, granted, you're typically grabbing that narrow branch and then hacking at it with a machete, but you're going for that V location, and the angle that you hold the blade at has to be based upon the angle that branch comes from, as opposed to just swinging at reeds.
But I think where I'm having trouble with the machete, and the reason I probably picture myself using it like a baseball bat, is I can't figure out how to sharpen it to actually make it sharp enough to cut something,
You put nails in it. No, I'm just kidding.
My recommendation with machetes would be to get there. They do make some that are combat ready out there.
No, I mean, you get it sharp enough that I can actually get it to cut through weeds and be able to cut through, cut a branch or something if I want. I got to figure out how to sharpen it to that degree.
Use a Dremel.
Yeah.
I could use a Dremel tool. That's true. I could do that.
Also, you could go Far Cry 4 and just take a 2x4 and put a saw blade into it. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. No, I'm being kind of silly, but
I am too. I'm sorry.
Actually, improvised weaponry in and of itself is kind of silly. Even when you do go back to the medieval era, when you had people that worked on farms trying to figure out ways to basically, we'll just let's go to the religious terms to pound their swords. What is it? Pound their swords into plow blade? No, plowshares into swords. There we go.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, because at that point you're not getting like a proper
never said anything about that, Shadow Heath. And you don't even believe in God, because so how do you get? No, I'm sorry. I listened to your podcast. Sorry.
I'm sorry. The actual debate from earlier that I broadcast. Oh man,
it reminded me. Man, I couldn't decide whether he had gotten better or worse, and I made that comment about pigeon chess earlier today.
The number of times that he contradicted himself in one sentence alone was hilarious.
Who's this who contradicted themselves?
Oh, this was that ancient slavery debate with G-Man, and it's funny because since then I actually sat down with good old Max and basically gave him a pretty decent defense of biblical slavery that I would never have given to somebody like G-Man.
Hey, Shadow Heathen, just something I wanted to ask before I go. What would you recommend, or what do you use, like to sharpen, like a sword or something like that, or a machete or something like that? What would you use?
I don't dull it. I get a good blade that has a good edge and just keep it. I mean, I haven't had to do anything to sharpen this, and if I did, I'd take it to be professionally sharpened.
But I mean, okay, so it's not like if you were actually using it in the field or working with something that an edge tool or something that you just get a new one, I guess, or something, or get somebody. Or I don't know what to do.
Well, also, as I said, I do know guys that run a forge, so if it was a standard tool, now, mind you, I have swords and whatnot, but even then, I'd take it to my friend that works at the forge and say, dude, can you do me a solid on this? Or what do you want to do this?
If you're going to do it on your own, you probably want a good water stone and know how to wet it properly.
Now, there are knives that I've sharpened with whetstones and what have you, but, when you're trying to get that real serious blade on it, especially with something that didn't have that much of a razor point to begin with, the whetstone's not going to do you much good. You're going to have them basically put a new edge on it.
What is a whetstone? Whetstone removes metal, right?
A whetstone basically rubs down the metal so that you get the blade. You have to make sure that you have the angle right.
And I'm probably not advised to do, because you got to have a good scratch pattern too if you're going to go in one direction.
Wouldn't it be relative to the grit of the stone, do you think?
Well, whetstones wear as you use them, so you have to kind of use them consistently, in my experience at
But
least.
isn't the word whetstone is relative, not to just getting wet, but I think it's just a general terminology people use for some type of sharpening stone, isn't it?
Pretty much.
Well,
Yeah,
when I was in
all
Cub
different
Scouts,
grades. Like you could have a
honestly,
40 or 50 grit, or like a 600 or 10,000 or whatever, right? Couldn't you have
It's
all-
kind of like sanding your sword, yeah, using a
yeah,
rock.
start with a coarse
just-
one and then work to a finer one, I would think. Right?
I mean,
I go to the
Yeah,
store, I buy a
it
whetstone, and I use
depends.
it.
Yeah, it depends on two things. Probably it depends on the metal itself and the geometry of the grain that you're going to do it on. Because if you do it at like any other degree at which that sword was initially sharpened, you're going to turn it into junk. Probably.
Yeah,
Oh, I mean, yeah, you'd want to follow the same geometry that they were using, correct?
that's why.
But when a sword is cleaned from when you buy it, you won't see it right away. So like you could just sit there and go in one
I've
direction.
trashed several blades in my day, which is why I take them to professionals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think that is, well, anyhow, it's been very interesting. I'm trying to pick up on this. Anywho, have a good night, guys. Take care.
Take
Good
care,
night.
man.
Take care.
Thank you.
Oh, hey, can I just share something really quick?
Never.
The,
Go ahead.
here? Hold on. Give me a minute.
He's like, he took you seriously? He's like, okay, I'll be quiet.
Oh, okay. Prudent and I have a long history, and Prudent's come so far over the years, and I really do appreciate him. But I'm still going to give him the grief that I used to always do. But I haven't asked him to say something profound in years.
No, I'm
Never.
saying, so this is like a weird tweet that I found. Like, have you ever seen anything more patronizing than this? 19-year-old Kylie Jenner is worth $900 million and on pace to become the youngest self-made billionaire ever. Really shows that meritocracy doesn't actually exist, right? What are you doing with your life?
I'd love to know what they're basing that 900 million on. If it's based on perceived revenue, then maybe, but she's not worth that much. That's way, yeah.
Anything that you can do, like when you're born into a super rich family. You're literally handed just all the endless capital you want, and you don't have any risk.
You still.
That's what I've seen. Like, yeah, newscasters walk off set. It's like, I'm sick and tired of hearing this of this family. They actually unmic their lavalier and they walk off. like what? He was originally famous for what? For being a lawyer for the OJ case / fashion designer, or
yeah,
not Kylie Jenner, the Kardashian. You know, like.
Well, that was the Kardashian. Yeah, Jenner is
Bruce Jenner, obviously. Yeah,
Bruce Jenner, Caitlyn Jenner's daughter. You know, whatever you want to call him or her.
it.
Well, she produced a very tone-deaf Pepsi commercial that they banned, and I saw it, and I was just like,
oh,
you know what I'm talking about then. Yeah, okay.
Oh, yeah.
It was awful.
There was a pretty funny meme that went around. I actually shared it. It was, you know that picture of Malcolm X, like where he's posing with his guns looking out the window?
Uh-huh.
There was a little meme that somebody wrote, and I kept sharing it. It was, the meme says, it's when the cops come and there's only Coca-Cola in the fridge.
That's good.
Yikes.
Oh, come on, that's funny, and you know it.
No, I thought it was funny.
Whether it's funny or not, I'm still not laughing at it.
Well, I know, but in all honesty, when I saw that commercial, I thought it was a parody, and sure enough, not even a week later, SNL did it, and then they blurred the line whether or not it was parody or not, because, quite frankly, it was just ill-advised, tone-deaf, and just stupid.
So,
I mean, it's like,
so what's this deal with the G-Man drama?
oh god. Well, yeah, he called 911 on nobody, apparently, I guess. And he found out that he had to do a lot of things. He's ill. I've never met the guy, but just
he
from what I've
called
seen,
911 in Jersey for drag in Texas.
Well, yeah, and what I loved is he doxed himself. Should I call the Irvington police?
Yeah.
And you'll probably get flagged because I told you.
Oh, yeah. He's done this kind of thing before, like where he makes legal threats against people. He once, I remember one time he made legal threats against people in the UK, like who were arguing with him. And I'm just thinking to myself, like, how And I'm like trying to explain this to him. I'm like, okay, you realize that like that's very complex, right? Like you're literally trying to intervene like in a legal system of a foreign country. You don't even really know the legal system of your own country very well, much less a foreign one. And yet you think you can pull off a lawsuit like that? Fuck off.
He doesn't even know the legal system of his own theocratic notions of his own Bible. Like he worships a book. I mean,
yeah, that doesn't sound very Christian.
what I said or what he is or
what he said.
He's not very Christian.
He's not very Christian.
Yeah.
I mean, my eyes were open. Actually, I actually felt really, really harmed and disturbed. Not harmed, but disturbed by when Jade had passed away. And forgive me, but that really hurts still. But when Jade passed away, he put that video up where he said a moment of silence, and then he stopped himself and he says, "I'm gonna let the Bible talk for me, but I'm gonna stop." And then what was it? 3 days ago, he put out that thing. Y'all are gonna end up like Jade in the Lake of Fire unless you. And I was just like, whoa. What? To quote G-Man, whoa. But I was just like,
he's wretched.
I was like, that was pretty wretched. I understand, aside from your religious convictions or whatever you believe about what happened to Jade, don't do that. That's just not helpful. And like, what are you doing? I mean,
well, what was the deal with Jade? Did she kill herself or something?
No. Hang on.
I'll leave this to Heathen. Go ahead.
Let me jump in here. Now, Jade was a very beloved fixture in our community for a long time, and she was Catholic and a lesbian. She was also a non-practicing lesbian, a celibate lesbian. Now, G-Man, in all of his lack of wisdom, couldn't figure things out. Like, theologically speaking, it could be said that since she was born a lesbian and was attracted to women and was not a practicing lesbian, then she was clearly fighting against that temptation that she was born with. Now, being born with this, of course, you could say that God designed her in such a way that she was attracted to women. And being attracted to women, this would be her proverbial cross to bear. This would be that thing that God had charged her with overcoming over the course of her lifetime. And being a celibate lesbian, she clearly had been, which it would put her as being loyal to God. He couldn't grasp this. Since she was a lesbian, that in his mind meant she was actively having sex with people. Lesbian sex. Because he couldn't figure out the difference between attraction and actual acting based upon that attraction. And he would break that down to, well, gee, she's attracted to women, and if she's thinking about sex with women and lusting after them, which are two different things, which he also couldn't figure out, then clearly she's sinning, and as such, she's going to the lake of fire.
Yeah, that's that thought crime principle. Whereas
that whole story is depressing.
Yeah, it really kind of is. So he was badgering her for months, about 2-3 months probably. I don't know if you actually would recall.
Well, it got worse when he started reading Romans, and he started screaming it, and she started saying, "He's hurting my ears. He's hurting my ears."
Oh, that's a separate issue, but yeah.
Well, no, but like it was. Well, no, 2 years ago he hurt her ears because he was screaming in the mic with a bullhorn. But he did it again without a bullhorn when he was screaming it, but because. She said he's hurting my ears, and he happened to be talking about a anti-gay quote in the Bible, if you want to call it that, but it's not.
Okay, he started literally screaming in a hangout and said that he was quote imitating the Hebrew Israelites who weren't present, had nothing to do with the hangout, so he was just doing it to be a douche.
Yeah. And then I think Shani or whatever said, she's saying it's hurting her ears because she doesn't want to hear it. It's like, no, you morons. She has a hearing impairment in her ears, and amplification causes I don't know. Sorry.
Actually, it would cause for her major disorientation and a massive headache for days straight.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure in the Bible the only people who can't be gay are men.
It doesn't actually technically say anything about women lying with women. You're correct in that one.
Yeah.
However, in accordance to Judaic tradition, which, as we saw from that debate earlier, is something he likes to ignore because it's quote extra biblical. It's only the history of the culture that wrote the frickin' thing to begin with. Yeah, sorry. in accordance to Judaic tradition, though, any kind of intercourse, we'll call it, that is not intended to lead to offspring is actually prohibited, or was, because the whole point of it is you're supposed to only have sex in order to do that. But in terms of the practices of women, masturbating each other and this kind of stuff, that was a very well practiced technique that women would learn in the red tent, which is a place that they were sent to, only the women, to be amongst their own while menstruating.
Well, let's not forget that G-Man happens to be very respectful of women and show. Wait a minute, no, that's not right at all. That's the reverse of.
No, very disrespectfully. I mean, the thing is, a woman telling him to do anything, especially when he's cornered, he will lash out, and he lashes out constantly over just about every darn thing. But there's one occasion when Fiona was sitting there correcting him on something biblical that he lashed out at her and did with the whole women shouldn't preach and shouldn't teach and this whole kind of nonsense. When the funny thing is, the only thing she was saying is, read the next line.
Yeah, he's a monster. I mean, plain and simple.
Is, yeah. And he's gotten worse over the years.
Well, he's gotten to a pinnacle point where he's getting so triggered and victimized where, I don't know, I haven't talked to Drag about this. I've actually asked him about it. He said, no, Shadow Heathen's having a hangout. Go see what he's up to. Because he said, no, I'm going to go. I was like, well, I'll just see what he's talking about and hang out. But I don't want to, start anything. But I'm just like, gosh, it gets to a point where I think, we don't hear from Gus too often, but Gus was saying, like, what point do you get to when you need to shut a guy down? I mean, there's not much we can do about it, but man.
Okay, here's the thing is, after the 2 call-out videos and how hard Drag was pushing in this kind of stuff, because my second call-out video, I radically changed the direction of it, because I'm thinking, okay, let's give him one last fucking chance, because just around the time that was coming out, it looked like he was heading for a major emotional mental breakdown. And I decided to basically reach out to Drag and some others that were involved in the incitement, we'll say, and I pulled back the reins, and I pulled back hard, and I'm like, let's give him a week or so, see if he can calm the fuck down. And that was round about the time that Jade passed, actually. So in some ways it worked out kind of well, because it was like, okay, let's give the community a little time to mourn, and once we feel like that time period is given, we can then go back in full tilt, and I'm not pulling back on the reins again, because he just showed himself to be more and more wretched. So if they end up pushing him to the point of mental breakdown at this point, so be it.
Yeah, well, I know we're on the air, so I don't know anything, but I'm not even going to say anything. But Drag or somebody claims to have something on him. I don't know what it is. I'm not going to say what it is, but what confuses me is that
I know what it is.
Okay, well, I know. I'm not going to ask you. I'm not going to say it out loud. I don't even know what it is.
Please
but
don't.
My point
Please
is,
don't. But I do.
No,
know.
I don't. I don't know what it is. But my point is, if that's like the nail in the proverbial coffin, I guess, if I don't say we should do it, but I mean, what is it going to take? Because who knows what kind of damage he could do? Because he's saying B-17 is a cure for cancer. He's doing harmful things to people emotionally. I mean, he's a death dealer in terms of science, and he's an emotional, abusive animal in terms of, what comes to religious and spiritualism. I mean, regardless of whether you believe or not.
I'm going to. We'll call this a little bit of a confession. I had a conversation with the Garys the other day, the Ridgeways.
Oh yeah.
And not all. Now, mind you, I'm not telling them what to do and this and that, but I gave them some recommendations of ways to screw with him. And my wife got up that morning and asked me why I had this big grin on my face, and I explained it to her, and she says, "Okay, so I was wondering how long it was going to take before you started gaslighting." And I'm going to leave it at that. I've given them some friggin' ideas. I don't know whether they'll do anything with it or not, but if you want to fuck with them, I know how.
Well, all I know is I just bumped into him on the internet, and recently, I think Slim was talking about him, and I found some interesting things on his channel. The bestiality video was like just hilarious.
Well, the one thing that gets me was he was not in the hospital for a back problem. Is that correct?
Yeah, actually, it was around the time that I had my second stroke.
Well, no, but I heard about. I'm sorry. I hope you're doing better.
Oh, don't worry about that. Don't worry about that right now. That's not even really the point. The point.
No, but
oh, sorry. I'll let you continue.
No, I was gonna say he was in the hospital, but what went out was he was in back pain. But the video itself shows him leaning, according to the video, unless it's reversed, leaning to his right off of the bed. And I'm like thinking, if you had a back problem that required you to be in the hospital, you would not be leaning to your right looking into a phone. I mean, I'm no doctor, but I'm just saying, was he in the hospital for a back problem? Drag said no. I mean, it doesn't matter, but I mean, he's all big about not breaking the ninth commandment. And he doesn't have to tell us why he's in the hospital, but don't tell us you're in there for a back problem if it's something else. Just say, I'm in the hospital, I'm not feeling well.
Incidentally, just as a quick note, read what's in the side note in the side chat, but do not state it aloud.
Okay.
All right, well, I'll have to go to work right now.
Yep, that was the plan that I passed on. That's how you get to the fucker.
Was it about something I said, or?
Oh no! Just look at the sidebar. I let them know what the plan, the idea I passed on was. In short form, of course, there was like planning for like a couple hours, if they decide to go that route or not. And if they do, we should be hearing a very interesting video in the future from G-Man. Just saying.
Yeah, I was about to say, if anything, he'd reveal it himself. I mean, he's very good at doxing himself either way.
Well, I mean, this is the problem: is every bit of information they have is him doxing himself. I mean, just walking around to the camera and this in his neighborhood and this kind of stuff. I mean, people can sit there and watch that and trace where he's been and where he's going and this kind of stuff, and things like Google Maps and this and that. They can extrapolate from there, and this is why you will never see a video of me sitting at the pond in front of my house.
Well, I remember him walking out, and people were saying, "Don't walk outside," because, I mean, I'm not going to say it, but like the place he works has the phone number and name on the sign, and it's just like, "Don't go outside," and he does it anyway. And then, like, what the other night he said, Irvington. I'll just say it. He said Irvington Police. He revealed the city he was in. I mean, it's just like any little bit is.
Well,
I mean, I don't know
the
if
funny thing is, I somewhere in my brain, I keep thinking that he can't be possibly as dumb as he actually is. So when he said Irvington, I'm like, Irving? What do you mean Irving? That's the wrong part of Texas, you moron. And then it occurred to me, no, that's not what he said.
Yeah, it's like I said, I didn't dox him myself because he'll come after you now saying, "Hey, somebody in your chat, or somebody in your live chat or hangout doxed me." I'm like, no, I didn't. I just said what you said.
Well, the kicker is he's been running around for years claiming that saying his name is doxing him when there's over 150 people named Gary Moore in his state.
Mm-hmm.
Over 150. There's like 160 something people that are named Gary Moore.
It's like saying, you told people my name was John Smith. How dare you?
And incidentally, for the record, when I say that name, I'm not talking about G-Man. I'm talking about other people that have that name.
Yeah,
so,
I know.
Just to specify.
Actually, I think I went to high school with a Gary Moore. So it's like,
well, there's a lot of people just named Gary alone.
Well, yeah.
So, like that's a pretty common name.
Of course, he then started sitting there giving people grief, saying, before I talk to you, I want your name, I want your address, I want your social security. And I was like, dude, you're talking identity fraud with the shit you're asking. What the fuck?
Well, yeah, didn't he do that to Slim Jim? He said, give me your soch.
He did that in the direction of Slim Jim as well as in the direction of Spackle, I believe.
So what you're saying is he's giving the alt-right ammunition.
Yeah, he's giving everybody ammunition, quite frankly, in all honesty. I mean, he's so misdirected and so spiteful about everything. I don't even think he's... See, that's what I think. That's the thing that's confusing about it. It's just like...
He acts so badly in the name of Christianity that he's put me in the position of feeling that I need to defend Christianity.
Yeah, and I guarantee you he's not smart enough to to be doing that. It's just like, hey, this is all a joke. I actually hold a PhD in several degrees, I do declare, and you have all fell for my trap that people can act as inhumanely as me, forcing you to defend Christianity. I do declare. I don't think he's that way.
Asshole ran around for about a month sitting there saying that this was all because of him going after Jade. And no, it wasn't about Jade. It was about the way he treats people in general.
Everybody, yeah. It's like he's a poster child for atheism.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, I was watching his videos a little bit, a few of them, and you see, like, I'm actually anti-theist, and so like I watch his videos, and I'm just like, this is the guy.
This guy.
Well, I mean, that's the thing is he's like, well, you know, if I'm driving people away from Christianity, shouldn't the atheists like that? Because they try to make everyone an atheist. And I'm like, we don't want you to make people... No, you're not making people atheists. You're making anti-theists, and that's not necessarily what we want.
Well, you're making people stupid.
Well, here's the thing is... Wait, please allow me let me extrapolate on that before I continue. Because I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with somebody taking an anti-theistic position. But your cardboard cutter anti-theist is somebody that's really pissed about religions. And that's not what we want. We want people that have reasoned positions that they're just opposed to religion.
Yeah, like if you have a position on whether you like religion or not, at least have a reason for it. And I don't think G-Man has any rhyme or reason for anything. I just think he's a narcissistic psycho or sociopath.
Yeah, I would agree.
Well, me personally, like, I don't really see the term anti-theist in that dim of a light. Like, I don't use it that way. Maybe I could be using it incorrectly, but I always looked at it as somebody who was it basically translated to a Gnostic atheist. So somebody who made the claim that they know that there isn't a God, etc.
Well, and anti-theist more often is somebody that simply opposes theism, basically, all across the board. Now, the issue that I have, and why I kind of poke fun at it a little bit and like to cite it and say, we don't need that, is because the deconversion process from any religion in some ways mirrors the stages of grief as kind of a loose guideline. And they get to that point that they're literally angry. Now, I won't say angry at God, but they're angry at the belief in God. They're angry about how it's used against people. They're angry about the indoctrination and this and that. And these people, when you're trying to deal with Christians or what have you, going through some kind of a process can be harmful and potentially have them harden up their own views to fight against anti-theism, which is more easily seen as an enemy than those that just casually don't believe and don't care.
Yeah. I mean, I was there once. I live in this. I'm not doxing myself. It's okay. I live in the Bible Belt, and so for a long time I was very angry towards theists. I was very actually kind of aggressive, aggressively. Now, granted, I've gotten past that because I've come to learn that through talking to people that don't exist within my area that are all kind of like G-Man, mind you. I mean, some of these guys in this area will sit here and it will sit there in front of you, shoot up meth, and then praise and then talk about Jesus. So at the same time,
I think you're saying very bad things about people who shoot up meth when you compare them to G-Man. I'm sorry.
I'm actually. Sorry. I'm going to throw something in the mix just for a moment here, because the thing that I have found is if I spend too much time listening to G-Man and the way he presents himself and the way he talks, I start getting very, very harsh anti-theistic leanings. So what I'll do is I'll start surrounding myself and going and frequenting Christian hangouts with decent Christians to remind myself that he is not representative of Christianity at all.
Yeah, that's what I had to do pretty much just because of the people in my area. It's like Slim is one of like I think like 3 or 4 Christians that I've met on the internet that aren't like crazy psycho Looney Tunes.
Well, there's a reason for that. Is most Christians online aren't sitting there proselytizing, yelling and screaming at people. They're just living their lives, being decent folk.
Oh yeah, and I think if there's any kind of silver, and I hesitate to use the word silver lining, but if there's any silver lining to what G-Man does, it's that it sheds. I think Slim Jim actually put it best. I can't remember what video it was. It was probably not too long after Jay died, but he just basically said, G-Man puts a war against atheists versus Christians. And it's like, no. And Slim Jim was saying basically, and don't quote me on this because he's not here to say it, but he was basically talking about how it's not that. It's about Christians and atheists and people who think reasonably. Mm-hmm. And Slim Jim basically was saying, yeah, that's the case because we have an organization, not an organization, but we have a community where you have Dragnot, you have, Shadow Heather, you have all these people who discuss things, but then you have Fiona, you had Jade, you had all these, you had Slim Jim, you had people who were at least willing to talk reasonably about things, and they weren't all atheists. But here's G-Man basically just saying, oh no true Scotsman. These people are all atheists. Da, 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 da. Either you're a G-Man Christian or not a Christian. And I stress the word G-Man Christian because he does that a lot, and it's awful.
He has his own theology because he can't understand anyone else's.
Correct.
Well,
correct.
Honestly, on a certain level, I do kind of respect that absolutist Bible perspective he has. To a point, like. I find there's something to admire in that because he's
Dude,
not.
Listen more. His theology isn't sound enough to even respect.
Well, I mean, you're probably right, but that's a large part due to the fact that the Bible itself isn't solid enough. So, like, if he's going purely by the Bible, I mean, of course he's going to contradict himself. It's about the same as a pure nihilist. Pure nihilist is going to contradict himself. So. Like, it's just so, like, he's like the poster child of the straw man so many atheists mistakenly build. Like,
well, I actually wish I saved the timestamp from Shadow's rebroadcast from what you were talking about earlier, from what you aired earlier. There was actually a point where what you said about G-Man might as well be a nihilist because he contradicts himself to the point where it's just like, I don't care about any other perspective except not only Sola Scriptura, but my own interpretation of Sola Scriptura. So actually what you said there is very true and poignant in that he might as well be a nihilist in that he has his own perspective of Sola Scriptura. So it's like, it's not even as bad as just Sola Scriptura. It's his own definition of it.
It's weirder still because he'll sit there in one breath talking about how it's important to take into account the cultural context, and then he claims to do it, and then the next sentence will say that it doesn't matter what the Jews or the culture actually believed because it has to be in the Bible and written specifically.
Yeah, you're right. It is worse than that. Like, it's so finite. It's like a microcosm of, unless you're hooked up to G-Man's brain, you can't understand it. That's where I'm just like I think I even left a comment for you. You actually replied to it. You said you can defend slavery better than he can if you wanted to. I think you said that earlier today.
I actually have a pretty solid one, but the problem is that it involves a greater context.
Right, and he doesn't know what the word context or nuance means. I'm not insulting G-Man, quite frankly. That's fact. He doesn't know what it means. He doesn't even know what debate means. I think debate he thinks is argument.
And he doesn't.
Now, the thing is, for any non-believer, my pseudo-apologetic to defend slavery basically is going to just leave a sour taste in your mouth and not in your belly, and it's kind of like, okay, I do not accept this. This is horseshit. Because it's contingent on the notion of God being omniscient.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But at the same point, on a theological basis, it's theologically pretty damn sound.
Well, there's always been a gap. And I'm sorry. Go ahead, Anu. I'm sorry.
Well, I was actually just going to say, just because you argue in favor of something doesn't mean you necessarily support the idea of it.
That's actually what I was about ready to say. Thank you for...
Well, it's kind of one of those things. I kind of gave the argument to Epi/Max, who was in here earlier. I'm really glad that he screwed it up in the debate that I gave it to him for, because it was a defense that I did not want to have to fight against, because it's one that, atheists would be like, oh, no, that's really not satisfying because you have to assume that there's a God and that this God is omniscient and blah, 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 blah. it's something the Christians would be like, yeah, I like that. That works. And I'm like, oh God, I don't want this to spread. No, I don't want to fight against it. No.
Well, the thing that drives me nuts about G-Man is he'll say stuff like, "Oh, you don't believe in God, therefore you have no morals. So I want you to explain to me." And using scripture, it's just like qualifier, qualifier, qualifier. You have to fit this detail in order for me to fit it. So, in other words, there's no way you can satisfy my answer. It's just like, you know what? Why don't you just say that and save us a bunch of time instead of pretending to be intellectually honest?
Actually, I have a question.
Go ahead.
About him. Is he for or against slavery? I mean, it sounds like a dumb question, but
I will quote it. Slavery in and of itself is not immoral, is his quote.
Yeah, that was the one I was about to say too, yeah.
Actually, believe it or not, if that's his stance, it is slightly more honest than if he took the opposite stance. And I have a reason for that. And that is...
But then he keeps equivocating actual slavery with metaphors.
I was about to say, he doesn't end there. He equivocates and say, unless you treat me fairly and pay me a wage. And I'm like, no, genius, that's not...
There was a somewhat ancient hangout ages ago that somebody's like, okay, well then would you be my slave? And he says, yeah, sure, as long as you feed me. As long as you pay me. And we're like, slaves don't get paid, you idiot.
Well, yeah, you know what's really funny?
I mean, yeah.
Now this is going to start off sounding kind of moderately racist, but it's not. This is actually a byproduct of history. The fact that he is black and a Christian at the same time, while also coming from the United States, is actually ironic. And this applies
actually, before we potentially use a very specific term that's in the English language that was brought forward by Malcolm X that makes people quake because of the second half of the term, there is no other term for it. And the hero of the community for, good grief, about a year was Alexander Carson when he pulled out the House N-word term from Malcolm X.
Yeah.
Because Carson, being as black as can be, was the one person that could get away with it.
Well, hold on. I wasn't even talking about the word at all. I was just making the point that slaves were brought in from Africa and were beat and into submission to believe in God.
G-Man was already confronted with that, and he basically just said no. He basically said that the Atlantic slave trade has nothing to do with the Old Testament. And I just said, well, no, yeah, he's already used that, and he's wrong about that.
He has this bizarre view of Old Testament slavery that, the slaves are actually treated really well, and no, they weren't. Especially if they were non-Hebrew slaves. Non-Hebrew slaves were prohibited from doing any kind of demeaning work. Those that were the Eved Canaanite, which would be the ones from the neighboring communities, you could treat them however you wanted.
I mean, the thing is there's a lot of I'm going to say misinformation on the subject of slavery. So it's kind of like I can kind of see if I wanted to give him some credit, I can give him that there is a lot of confusion on the subject, so I can see where he would draw that conclusion. And there are some exceptions to the rule in history. Very, very few, but those are exceptions. They're not the rule.
Incidentally, a couple quick notes. The 2015 debate is available on my channel. It's been resurrected from Lasoyo's archives. So it's there if anyone does want to see it, and I want to state that up front. Now, a good portion of the source material that I was referencing while I was in there was from a lecture series on the 613 laws of mitzvah, as well as the Jewish traditions from which they came. And I went into it in detail based upon that. I've done more studies since. And one of my premises in that debate was wrong, because what I didn't realize at the time was that prior to them being freed in Babylon, it was Mesopotamia, I believe, that went in there and freed basically all the slaves held by Babylon. They went in there and emancipated every slave and told them to go back to their homelands, and did not have slaves. So they'd seen examples of cultures, and this, we're talking Ceres the Great, I think it was, who was considered a Messiah to the Hebrew people at the time because he's the one that set them free. So they get free, go back to their homeland, and then start having slaves again. After being shown a better example of, freeing people and all this kind of stuff and building alliances based upon that. Actually helping arm slaves to help with the overthrow of a rival nation.
Well, and see, and that's, I don't know. Like, what I was going to say was, like, yeah, that's, well, what you were talking about, I knew about, like, their exceptions to the rules and everything like that. Even if, depending on the context of where you're talking about, we'd have to talk about that individually. But even if we had granted that, hypothetically, G-Man doesn't even agree to those because he's used the phrase, there is nothing wrong with slavery in and of itself. The phrase in and of itself does not lend any credence to context or definition by any means. It basically just says, if you call, if you just label that, it's like on paper, it doesn't mean anything. Well, the problem is slavery doesn't exist on paper. Slavery exists
in the real world.
In the real world, and there are real consequences.
And
to
it's
it.
not merely a metaphor.
No, I'm not. Yeah, I'm not accusing you of that. I'm just saying that's one thing
great.
G-Man does as a defense to what you brought up. Yeah.
Right. I mean, the thing is I have made a very similar argument, so this is kind of jarring that he's made because I moral relativity, etc. But the thing is, like, I like to find ways to point out how things are wrong or bad without having to plead to morality, and I think I did that pretty well with slavery in a discussion I was having, like, I think several months ago. And I was making the point that, at least in the United States, I can't speak for the whole planet, but in the United States, slavery could not work in the modern era because there's too much crap to do, and that would reduce the amount of people to do it. And it would also, like, for instance, we would have less soldiers. We would have and granted, you could make these slaves do all the dirty work, but then you're going to have all these people not doing anything, and then there's too many people. We got 350 million people. You can't take slavery in the modern era just wouldn't work.
Well, and I don't know if it was G-Man, but I think somebody even said that when you go to a job that you don't like, you're a slave. And it's like, well, no, that's not true because you still get paid.
Oh, so yeah, at most you can make the argument that that's indentured servitude,
right?
At best,
yeah.
And the thing is, though, is with slavery, as I said, like, and this is like same thing. A similar argument I've made with genocide, and what I had said about genocide was that. I don't really see it as, I don't want to use the moral argument that everybody else uses, and instead what I'll say is that slavery is bad because so far it's never actually worked. Nobody has succeeded in performing a genocide. Why pursue that which won't work?
Well, in any case, I'm going to cut in for a moment at this lovely point here, and I'm going to respond to a moment for somebody in the chat, DB Cisco. The 613 laws were quote unquote invented by a rabbi. There's a little bit more than it simply being invented. There were traditions and what have you. All of the laws are actually based upon that, but it is more of a modern dogma in terms of the way that they go through it. Now, this is still taught to Hebrew children in the modern era, but it's considered the definitive work on the matter more so than anything else because we don't necessarily know that much about what really was going on in the culture at the time and how things were regarded. So it's the closest thing we have to a guidepost. Anyway.
Well, what's interesting is even if we granted, like, let's say we granted that, G-Man has his cake and eats it too in terms of that because he'll refer to the New Testament to the one he screamed to Jade, which arguably may have harmed her in the final days of her life. I'm sorry. I'm angry at him about how he treated her. I'm not saying he killed her, but I'm just saying that wasn't cool. Anyway, when he uses the New Testament to justify such things, it's just like you say we're not bound by the old covenant, yet you quote the Old Testament. Then you turn to the New Testament and you twist it to your own nuance, even though you don't know what nuance means, and you use it to harm people. And it's just like, either you believe, either you're sola scriptura or you're not. If you're sola scriptura, then you don't need to try to explain it to people. You just basically need to read the King James to people and then be quiet. And if that's the case, you have nothing to offer. You could just basically say, read the Bible, do what it says, even though I'm wrong, which he pretty much does anyway.
Well, wait a minute. But actually, most Christians I've found say that the Old Testament's irrelevant and only the New. But and then most of them, whenever you ask, well, what about Adam and Eve? Do you think that's all bullcrap? They'll say, well, no, of course not. And so, I mean, like, I think most Christians are hypocritical in that regard, though.
Well, hang on, though. Here's the thing: is when you're talking about covenants, there is a new covenant that's given in the New Testament. And the thing is, based upon that, they can say that the old covenant doesn't necessarily apply anymore. And if they're going to go with that, that's perfectly fine. But then you get things like that one little reference from Leviticus that they love to quote so many times. Well, that's part of the old covenant. It shouldn't necessarily apply. So then they have to jump to Romans and that one reference, which is inaccurate in Romans because they're not talking about homosexuality in that particular verse. They're talking about temple prostitution if you pay attention to the Greek. And if you do any rudimentary scholarship or looking into it, you'll find out that that's exactly what they're talking about, and that's part of why that letter was written.
Well, I think I was in a conversation not even a month ago with you, and who was it? Catholic. He has that Freddie Mercury icon. Or
that's Max.
Max, and we were arguing basically about the not one jot and tittle of the law, but he was parsing versions of the law, saying, "Well, no, that's the cultural law, that's the ministerial law, that's the rabbinic law. There are different laws that refer to it." Because I was bringing up shrimp. And massacring people at Red Lobster.
If you look through the handling of the laws, they do break them up into different categories. Now, granted, as was stated externally, a lot of this is based on a more modern representation of it. But things like the temple laws and these kind of things are things that now that there's no longer a temple to actually do these temple rites in, those clearly don't apply.
Well, that's what I asked Max. I said, then when Jesus was talking about not what jot and tittle of the law, which law was he talking about? And he said all of them. And then when I said, okay, if you're talking about all of them, then you can't then say that these specific ones in the Old Testament no longer apply because. And then he appealed to Paul, and I said, no, I'm not talking about Paul. I don't know if you remember this, but I said, I'm not talking about what Paul said about law. Talking about the gospel that you say you got to bring up. It said Jesus said all laws, according to you, are still in place.
And
so
that's
don't appeal to Paul.
And that's where he screwed up in that discussion, as far as I'm concerned, because there's an easy out on that. Because if you look back to the Greek, the verse there isn't simply saying until it passes away. It can also be read as until these laws are brought forward in time, meaning that the laws must change with the times. And that particular read of that scripture would really have gotten the noose from around his neck.
Well, hold on a second. You said earlier, and I meant to say this. You said that Romans is about temple prostitution. Was that
particular line when it's referring to people giving over to their giving over to their carnal nature? I can't remember the exact thing. Giving over to reprobate mind and that kind of stuff. When it's talking about men lying in men and this and that in Romans, what they're actually talking about there, it specifically referencing is temple prostitution.
Hang on
a second. I've spoken with some Greek linguists regarding this, and I've spoken to a lot of seminary students, and the seminary students pretty much agree that the whole thing's hyperbole and is kind of crap anyway. Now, the Greek linguist informed me that there are time and place markers, which means that particular text is not meant to be taken outside of the specific context of what was going on there at the time, which was due to a lot of people being brought into the faith that were not of Hebrew tradition, but were of Hellenistic tradition initially. What they were doing is they were bringing in practices like temple prostitution and this kind of stuff into the fold. Well, there was an argument between the Jews and Gentiles over who were the real inheritors of the kingdom and who it really was that quote knew God. And that's the argument that was going on at the time. So to get them worked up into a frenzy prior to his visit there, where he was planning on setting them straight, he ended up sitting there and writing this diatribe, really, more than anything else, to just get them all worked up and excited about his visit. Now, what he said and what he taught them when he showed up, no one knows. It wasn't recorded.
Well, I mean, if it was something where it said that you could never have prostitution in a temple or church or whatever, ever, if it was a standing law to date, like, I was going to say that they're kind of shooting themselves in the foot a little bit, because, like, I'd actually go to church.
Yeah, well, you know.
Well, there's another component about this I think obviously G-Man would never, ever, ever in a million years understand in terms of sola scriptura is that the Bible is not a book; it's a collection of books that were selected at which is why he also denounces the Council of Trent, because he's just like Council of Trent. When they selected these books is not true because they were selected by men. It's just like, well, you do realize that all these books, whether you believe it or not, still had to be, whether influenced by God or not, were written by men, and therefore we already know that there are several books of which are not included in canon, kind of like a Star Wars novel.
Okay, I'm going to cut in right here. I think we need a moment of silence to mourn the lack of inclusion of the Book of Enoch, because Enoch was great.
Yeah,
You're right.
There was also the one where Jesus was a dragon slayer.
Mm-hmm.
It was pretty cool. And he killed children.
What gets me, though, is a lot of G-Man's theology is based upon watching movies like Left Behind.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Which is just Christian fanfic, really.
Well, it's also the pretext of a washed-up actor trying to make money again.
Which one? Are you talking about the new Cage? Oh,
well,
Cameron
I was
Cage.
actually referencing the series of book prior to the movies, but okay.
Right, yeah, the book too, but the book too, yeah, the guy, but like Kirk Cameron's bad enough, but I mean, let's just be honest. He claims I was an atheist. I was convincing people. It's like, no, I'm sorry, I don't care what anybody says. I don't buy that. You're out of money. He went to be an evangelical and hooked up with Banana Man.
Well, then Cage, and then Cage
Cage has all these back taxes to pay off. If you look at his filmography, he films 5 films a year because he has to. It has nothing to do with whether he. I'll give him a pass because he does all these movies.
Actually, hang on 1 second. I just have to. I'm putting up the link momentarily for anyone who wants to join. It won't be there long.
Go ahead, Anu. I'm sorry.
What's really funny though is I watched this thing where they actually called him the designated hitter of Hollywood because he swings at everything that he gets and doesn't and misses the mark 9 times out of 10. Like
that would be sinning now, wouldn't it?
Huh?
That would be sinning now, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would. But it was pretty cool though. Like if you sit there and watch all of his movies, he's turning into Steven Seagal. Honestly.
Oh, that's harsh. No, I'm just kidding. No, I know what you mean. Yeah, Steven Seagal though actually hasn't produced any halfway good movies in at least a decade.
I was gonna say he hasn't produced anything good since what was that?
Under Siege.
Since Above the Law.
Oh, whoa! You're giving him less credit than I am. Then, yeah.
Yeah.
Above the Law was great though.
Yeah, I haven't liked anything after that. Under Siege just was annoying, and I think actually no, Foreigner. The Foreigner was okay.
Are we still talking Cameron here?
No.
Too bad. I was going to just laugh at Saving Christmas. Damn it.
Well, that was actually a hypocrisy left and right when he was talking about how Christmas is so commercialized. He decided to be so dishonest that he flipped the script on that. He goes, no, because Christmas trees are really crosses. It's like, now you're pulling stuff out of your butt. Dude.
Oh, yeah. It was bad. It was horrible.
But you know what?
Funnier still is after it got a really bad Rotten Tomatoes score, he tried to send his minions there to try and give it better reviews to bring up the rating. And you started seeing reviews coming up there like, in good conscience, I can't give this a positive rating. This is terrible.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
To me, and I'm sorry, to me that was just a nail in the coffin in terms of Cameron's dishonesty. Yeah. It just basically told me Cameron has no investment or no real care for his message is. He just wants to make money.
I love Ray Comfort.
Okay, no joiners. I'm removing the link.
But you guys know who Ray Comfort is?
Oh, of course. Banana Man, yeah,
dude.
Yeah.
I freaking like. I mean, I'm not. I don't agree with him on anything, but I just love like how he does what he does. It's just.
Yeah, he, Ken Ham, and Kirk Cameron, all three, I am thoroughly convinced are absolutely dishonest.
Yeah, but they're very entertaining. Like
they're entertaining.
Like Alex.
Also sadly influential in what they do. They influence
Yeah.
people who would otherwise be good critical thinkers to be like, huh, now that you think about it, a banana is a lot like a can of pop.
Yeah, Hogan recently pissed me the fuck off. And it was actually kind of in a weird backhanded way that he did a video going after flat earthers because a lot of Christians are are starting to fall in line with that. And a lot of the content of that was really good, and I'm kind of getting into it and listening. I'm like, wow, I'm actually enjoying something that Ken Hovind put together. Wow, he's doing a great job of this, very thorough and very. And then he blames it all on atheists. That flat
Ken
Earth
Hovind
is a fucking atheist conspiracy, and I'm like, you motherfucker.
Ken Hovind has a lot in common with G-Man in that aspect, in that when he runs out of arguments about any of his credentials, which none of which he does have,
Sure.
he'll end his argument with, "One day you'll stand before God. Yeah, I love science, and you'll stand before God, and He will judge you. And if you don't believe in 6,000-year-old Usher chronology, you're gonna burn. And that's all I have. Good day." That's pretty much him. He's like the Paul Harvey of sadists. I don't know.
Well, you know what's really funny though? That I loved that Ray Comfort did he did this movie not that long ago, and if I remember the number correctly, he said that the movie was watched or purchased, something like that, in over 250 countries, and like I nearly spat out my real teeth, because I don't have false teeth. So it kills the joke. But yeah,
I'm lucky in that regard. I got the falsies.
But it's just funny because like there's not 250 countries.
Yeah.
Like
he's probably counting regions of countries.
I don't think he really counted. I think he pulled a number out of his ass.
Well, last time I checked, I think there's 190 or 195.
Yeah,
we're gonna have to check to see. We're gonna have to check to see what Scientology uses for the stats. He could have pulled it out of that.
Well, no, it's less than 200. I know that. So.
Well, yes, Scientology stats are false, so he could have used theirs. Who knows?
I want to talk to a Scientologist.
He might have meant to say 250 languages. Maybe, who knows?
I've talked to a couple. It's not as entertaining as you might think.
Yeah, but there's no way the guy spent the time. It's hard enough doing like transcripting for English videos. There's no way he did. I mean, have you ever watched Netflix and checked the Englishes? Or languages. There's maybe like 5.
I've never seen 5. I've usually seen it 3.
3. Well, depending on the budget and stuff like that. Like if you made Mad Men or like Marvel TV, like Avengers and stuff like, or not Avengers, but Daredevil, Punisher. There may be like 3 or 4 or 5 at most.
And then
there's no way 250. It's like,
well, then if you take it away from English as the first language, look how many like high budget foreign films there are that don't even have English dub.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, it's if you want to go Sarah Palin, it's available in Africa and South Africa. Okay. Africa is not a country. But see, that's where I think that comes from. But see, but people don't care. They're just like, wow, big number, many countries.
Actually, right now,
don't care if 195 is the limit. Like that guy who accosted that woman with the Puerto Rican T-shirt. I won't go on about it, but he's like, why are you wearing that in America? I don't know, because it's an American territory. Did you finish high school?
Yeah.
It's a tangent, but my point is, never underestimate the power of stupid people in large numbers.
Well, what's funny is I was arguing with a Canadian on Twitter. Actually, this happens a lot. They'll say things like "you Americans" and stuff, and I like to take the pedantic stance on that and be like, well, technically, you're an American too. The continent itself is the Americas, and the United States is just the United States of America.
Yeah.
So you're equally as much of an American as I am.
Yeah, like there's United States citizen, and then there's Americans, which stretch all the way down to Santiago, Chile, if you want to be technical. It's like,
But yeah, it's really fun to argue with anti-free speech Canadians.
Yeah. Hey, you're telling me Chile in South America means that they're Americans?
Hang on a second. Reposted. NJ, is it still functional or what? Sometimes, because this was initially an on-air hangout that's now technically off-air, sometimes the links stop working. If it did, let me know. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm confused. Is this on air or off air?
Oh, we are on. This is being broadcast on air on a secondary channel now that Jim's off.
Yeah.
Because he had to go to bed, and I'm okay. Yeah.
This is where I'm like, are you calling me on a cellular telephone? I don't know you. Prank caller, prank caller.
Yeah, the phone could be potentially the issue on this one.
No, I'm teasing you. I'm just talking about Pulp Fiction, the line where.
There we go. Hey, we have existence. Let me show and broadcast. There we go.
I see a ceiling.
And now I will pull it again.
It has your future. No, sorry.
Yeah, this isn't one of my normal hangouts. Slim Jim had been running the thing, so I took over once it was time for him to go to sleep. So this is a continuation thereof.
You know what I have yet to see in all the times I've done hangouts is I've yet to see someone, or I've yet to see the back end of a Band-Aid.
Ouch. I mean, oh.
Well, I'm just saying, like, there is a ridiculous amount of people with Band-Aids on their webcams.
So the Canadians are not Americans.
Here we go.
All right. And let me explain to you guys why. Because this is kind of a weird concept. There's this kind of a like how we view this is that North America and South America are the name of the country of the continents. I mean, that's goes without saying. But by being a resident of those continents, you don't take that label, because to distinguish somebody by their continent, we generally don't do that. Like European isn't a people. Like European is a description of several different groups of nationalities, and in that sense. And if you want to be more accurate with it, you can say that Canadians are North Americans, which makes sense because we're part of the North American continent. So there's a group of nationalities essentially that fall under these labels that will apply to the continents. So somebody can be African, but they can also be Ethiopian. Somebody can be European, but also they can be German. In the case of Canada and the U.S. and Mexico, they're North American. Okay, that's how we generally distinguish them by that. America itself, as the entire landmass that encompasses North, Central, South America, all those things, isn't recognized as like one huge collection of things in the same way that you do this with other continents. So, I mean, if you want to be accurate, it'd be North American.
Well, G-Man was playing on the whole concept of the North American Union, and that coming into fruition, and that whole concept.
The Amero.
Yeah, and to be accurate, I'm with Sokka on this one. I was not agreeing with G-Man anyway. Under 2 points, you're right. Canadians are North Americans, and furthermore, you are government-wise still part of the British Commonwealth, correct? Or
well, yeah, we're still considered a Commonwealth, but that's just another label for us when we say
right.
The British Commonwealth. But here's the other thing that goes with this too. Okay, is why is there a designation? Like, why are residents of the United States the people that only use the nationality of American compared to anybody else out there? And there was this idea that you're kind of putting forward there that you guys call yourself American and you're the only the only proper ones that are using the term American to describe everybody within North America. But that's not true. It's good to remember that the United States of America is not the only United States in the world. Okay. You have like United Arab Emirates. You have even Saudi Arabia at one time was like that. The American comes from the title of the fact that you belong to the nation of the United States of America. It's just a compressed version of that.
Well, the reason the United States of America is called the United States of America is because at the time that the North and South were considered one continent. And so they were saying the United States of the continent of America, that was the whole premise. Now today, later on, they have split it up between North and South America, but ultimately at the time, actually specifically, it was actually considered one giant continent.
But even so, there's a difference between being part of a country and being part of a continent, and we generally don't demarcate it as you are a resident of this continent.
Well, I get that. But I'm saying whenever you say that, whenever you say when you're referencing the United States, as America. It just seems a bit. I don't know. It just seems. I get what you're trying to say. It's just. I think it'd be more accurate to say the United States rather than Americans. But then again, I guess there is no adequate way to say U.S. citizen other than saying U.S. citizen, and that's a bit of a mouthful.
Well, I'd put it a slightly different way, is that when it came to declaring a name of a country, the quote-unquote Americans were kind of, well, unoriginal. Canadians at least came up with a name for their fucking country.
Yeah, well, and then they used it, but you can't really call them original either because their flag has a maple leaf on it. So, I mean,
well, we just break it and just do what we're honestly about and just call ourselves Americans, like America, which is actually worse because if I remember right, America is something that Borat would wear on like a. I'm sorry, you know what I mean? Like it's like that.
But I get the argument.
I don't know.
I've heard a similar argument though as well, and I kind of see what you're getting at. But a similar argument was made in regards to how there is no such thing as an American accent was an argument I heard before, and the same is true for how there is no such thing as a European accent, and there's no such thing as a Canadian accent, because within each of those areas there is a large series of subsets. Or actually, there's a large series of subsets of multiple different people who have different variations of differing and similar accents, and you can't just say the American accent because there isn't one.
If we had Gus in here, he'd definitely correct us. He was like, "Oh no, there is no Canadian accent," and he'd be right because there's a distinct difference between Vancouver and Alberta in terms of accents. Yeah,
exactly. Well, we have Sokka in here for that.
You know, but it's not even like I mean, geez, Vancouver and Alberta. Like, I live, in BC. I can drive to most places in Alberta within a day. You know, if you want to be, to just cover the whole range, you say, from Vancouver to Halifax. That's a pretty far distance. That's like saying from Seattle to New York or something.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
I think when you
saying it's just like, oh man, it covers everything from Vancouver to Alberta is being like just like, oh man, yeah, the U.S. you can everything between Washington and Portland or Oregon.
Yeah, well, yeah. My point is they're both in Canada. They're just not Canadian accent. It's like can't. They are two different Canadian accents, but they're not both.
There's more than two.
Yeah, there's a lot. There's kind of like a generic, almost like North American accent that you do have. Okay. I don't think that I have too much of an accent compared to, talking to the average person from anywhere else in the Pacific Northwest of the United States. But there are certain dialects that become unique depending on what region you're in. When you're talking to somebody from Newfoundland, when you're talking to somebody from PEI, when you're talking to somebody from Brooklyn, when you're talking to somebody from New Orleans or Louisiana, those areas, there's areas that have certain dialects that are just variants on what we can call the accents.
I just want to wash my windows in the creek.
And Sokka, when you're talking to someone from Toronto.
That's my bar life.
See, because nobody calls it Toronto. If you're from, I lived in Toronto for 4 years. It's either T-dot or just T-O.
I've listened to Don Cherry enough to know how to pronounce it.
I listened to what was it? Kevin Smith and Scott Mosier. They did something called Scan BC, and they actually read. And of course, Scott is from Vancouver, and he read off the Scan BC bulletins from police. These are actual crimes, like actual police reports and respondents. And he read it in a Vancouver accent, where it's just like, Scan BC, police are responding to a house residence where 3 teenagers purchased a pizza with a fake credit card, not finished, and now are refusing to answer the door. It's like, hello, we know they're not coming out.
Doc, had you not said that you're from the British Columbia area, I would have guessed you were probably from like Indiana or Ohio, because you have a very clean way of speaking. You have a very clean accent, so I would have never guessed you were from Canada.
Oh, well, thank you.
So you're saying people from Indiana and Ohio have a clean way of speaking?
Well, I've worked with some people that were from Indiana and Ohio, and there was never really any kind of inflection in their accent. It was actually very clean, very nothing too distinguished.
Oh, I'm from one of those two states. I'll let you figure out which one.
Well, the state I'm in has a lot of redneck accents, I guess is the nicest way to put it.
I don't know. I'd go with Ohio based on an earlier drug reference.
Who, me?
A bad joke. Never mind.
Yeah,
What he's talking about.
Oh, he's talking to guessing which state you're in. Yeah, I don't know. But ultimately, no. But I don't know. Like I've heard a lot of accents. I think that the one accent though that I hate the most is that Jersey accent. It's really the most obnoxious accent I think.
Yeah, I used to live in New Jersey too. So
you're over exaggerating. It's the worst. I would say the worst is either Brooklyn or Boston.
Boyston.
No, it's not Boyston. It's Boston. What are you talking about? And I don't get this whole fucking pocket can't have it yard thing. It doesn't make any goddamn sense. It's a fucking barrier there, you beanhead.
My friend's wicked smart.
And the kicker is I've been out of Massachusetts so long I can barely do that accent anymore. It's kind of sad. No, it's not.
Well, wait, Heathen, do you like apples? Sorry, I'm not gonna do it.
No, I prefer PCs.
What's actually funny is the Southern accent. When you want to talk about like the American accents and like pure accents, is the Southern accent that we still have nowadays is actually kind of more of a retention of what Americans sounded like, 150 years ago.
That's annoying.
Yeah, the strong influence from it's the accent that you see in the American South is strongly influenced by the Scottish and the Irish settlers that moved down to those regions at those times. And while the language did change slightly, the isolation that they had there in the South compared to the North, that kind of how do you say this? The South didn't really modernize at the same rate that the North did in the.
Because they can't pronounce window.
Yeah.
The Industrial Revolution hit the North long before the South, yeah.
Yeah, and with that, there was like a change of language, and there was actually a relative isolation inside of this, the South. So the American accent, if you want to talk about an American accent, somebody traveling forward in time from the late 17, early 1800s, they'd feel more comfortable talking to a Southerner than they would from anybody in the North.
Well, that's true anyway, even for back then.
The English language has actually evolved slower in the U.S. than it has over in places like Britain or even Canada.
But that could also be because Britain and Canada are also more liberal in nature.
I would say it's because they've spent more time still talking to each other than they did with us, but
I mean, that's probably more accurate.
Just out of curiosity, what do you mean by more liberal? Just want to.
Oh, what I was meaning by that is just I didn't mean it in the political sense, but rather kind of political. Just basically, essentially, more apt to change things rather than be conservative about definitions, etc. So,
okay, that's cool. Yeah, that's an actual correct use of the term. Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, cool. Thanks. Sorry. Carry on.
Yeah.
I like it when Sokka Standard gets up and he then realizes he has no need to say anything. It's so rare.
No, it's like, I just wanted to clarify because in the context, a lot of times when people use things like conservative, people always equate that to political talk, but conservative could also just mean traditionalist.
Which is what I was kind of leaning towards.
Right. Yeah. So, like I said, is when I was I'm just like I'm not sure about the liberal thing because I'm thinking of the political context, but to see you actually use the words in those contexts is neat because you don't see that too often.
Not in this day and age, unfortunately.
I live in the Midwest, and they're all like insane traditionalists here. My grandmother does not buy fake trees; she cuts them. So, and since we don't have pine trees here, she cuts down cedar trees.
I just think it's a good thing that the Northeast has lost most of its early traditions. We don't actually tar and feather people anymore. We only do it for show.
I think they should bring back the gallows.
The tar and feathering thing, though, there is a town up in Massachusetts, I think it is, I'm not positive, that once a year still, just for show, tars and feathers somebody, but they don't use real tar. They just basically cover them in, for all intents and purposes, use motor oil and throw feathers at them. It's this weird thing that they do that's just, honoring
Sturbridge.
tradition. It's bizarre.
I think it's Sturbridge because they have a like a functioning kind of mock kind of village where it's like how it was
Sturbridge Village. Yeah, I forgot all about that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was there a couple of years ago, and I'm fairly certain they described that they have in just some kind of a mock kind of tradition they do tar and feather somebody. I'm fairly certain it's Sturbridge.
Yeah, quite possibly. I forgot all about that. Well, it's been so long since I've been back home.
Yeah.
I've been gone for, good grief, I've been down here in Texas for, I think, about 20 years now, almost. 19, 20 years, damn.
Yeah,
I've only visited back up there once in that time period.
Yeah. I went up to Cape Cod. I went up to Cape Cod for a little, little getaway with my parents. And, my father, he grew up in Massachusetts and was up in Cape Cod a lot when he was a kid. And he wanted to show me, he wanted to have his ashes, scattered. And as a little side trip, we went to Sturbridge and saw how, because they have, like I said, it's a functioning little village of how things were in the 1700s. And I'm fairly certain they mentioned that as kind of a, kind of a mock kind of punishment. They tar and feather somebody.
I was actually born down by the Cape.
It was really beautiful when I went, going up to Cape Cod and seeing it and how peaceful and tranquil it is. Martha's Vineyard and all these little ponds and that my dad used to go to when he was a kid and just spends time at. It's like, oh, if I had the money, I'd love to live up there.
Wow, first yawn. There we go. Must be time to make more coffee. Hello, Halo Blue. How you doing? I might be getting tired. I don't know. What is the coffee level? Oh, we're good. I have to make sure there's some for the wife in the morning, or else I get skinned or divorced. I don't know which.
So what's the deal with tarring and feathering anyway?
Oh, it actually was pretty fucking harsh. Back in the day, they used real tar, and it would... Well, people joke about, oh, they were tarred and feathered. It was basically how you ran somebody out of town, and they'd pour actual tar on them, and we're talking it would burn the skin, and trying to get off, you'd rip chunks of skin off. It was pretty wretched. But yeah, it was basically a punishment for somebody who needed to be ran out of town. They're not coming back in. You can fucking tell that they've been done somebody wrong, we'll just say.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was a pretty barbaric thing, but yeah, it's it's something that does bring me back to the thoughts of G-Man, though, because there are times that he makes me want to bring back the tradition for real,
How about boiling him in oil?
Have you ever listened to any of Dan Carlin's stuff?
Dan Carlin? No, I haven't heard of him.
Yeah, he does I guess a podcast or they're relatively longer podcasts, but he does something called Hardcore History. And Hardcore History, it's a great series if you listen to it, and what he covers are the most violent acts in history. They're like just essentially a history of human violence. is what he talks about.
Hmm.
And I'm trying to find. Let's see if I can find one here. I think this is. This is his website here, and you can just get some of his stuff for free from there, which is really good. There's here it is. Yeah, Painfotainment is one that he has. Is that I got here? I'll see if I can get you a link here. That's free right now, so you can download this. So anyway, here is the. I'll put this in the side chat. If you want to put that in the external.
I'll bounce it out there in a second. Let's see now.
Yeah. And the first one on the page there is called Painfotainment, and it's a history of public executions.
Ooh. Oh.
Yeah, it's just like right back from gladiatorial times to
external.
I tell you, the Mongols had probably one of the most brutal forms of execution.
Well, impalement for life.
Pouring molten silver in someone's ears and eyes.
Well, see, stuff like that was quick. That was the idea. And this is some of the stuff that he covers. One of the main things he covers is the entertainment aspect of executions and public humiliations and these things throughout the ages. I just
wanted to say right quick, Vlad, it's been centuries. Move on from the impalement. Sorry.
Actually, I have a reasonable specifically impalement and specifically in that region.
Well, it's interesting when Vlad the Impaler staked his victims, he put the pike through their bodies in such a way that they would bleed out over a course of like 3 or 4 days.
Yeah, through their anus.
If you guys think that being impaled is the worst death that you could possibly have, then you guys have probably not heard of being broken on the wheel.
Yeah, no, I mean it's definitely probably more painful, but I'm just like, to me, impalement is the best one just because I guarantee it's a sight to behold. A
sight to be, you know what? But
the part of the supposed tradition was lining them up on the road, and on that sense, I can see the intimidation factor. But
yeah, but being broken on the wheel, like you have a person, you sit them on, you lie them on a mound, and then you have the executioner come over with a big wooden wagon wheel and just start smashing the appendages.
Yeah,
smashing the arms, smashing the legs, crushing the chest, breaking as many bones in the body as they can without killing the person. And then taking the mangled heap of a body that's, because the arms and the legs are now broken and bend in directions that they shouldn't, and threading them through the spokes of the wheel.
Right.
And then to put them on display like that until they die.
There we go.
That is like wow. But the like I said, the really interesting thing about if you listen to the Painfotainment stuff, like the the podcast that he does there, is there's a great section in it because he works his way through history. Like, so he starts with the from the Roman arenas, working up through to the hangings in the British Empire in the end of the 19th century, and there was a point in time where he talks about these things were huge spectacles. People would come from miles around to come see these things. To come see these people suffer. Come see these.
It was the movie theater.
Yeah, it was. And when there was a time where they were in competition with the church. That executions were in competition with the church. The church didn't like the type of attention that these public executions got. So the church took them over. They turned them into more of a spiritual event. And
twice the spectacle at the same time.
Yeah. So there's this really great thing where he's going through the history there, and he talks about like the transition from just being a public spectacle to almost a religious event. And it's really neat. But anyway, yeah, the hardcore history, the Painfotainment stuff is good. The anybody that cares about
in a rudimentary sense, theater grew out of religion, so it was kind of fitting that after growing out of religion, it returned to religion for a time.
Mm-hmm.
But what I meant by impalement being a spectacle to behold, though, was just imagining rows and rows and rows of thousands of people, that were that are impaled. And actually, the other thought that comes to mind just now is, what if Jesus had been impaled instead of crucified? Like, what would those necklaces look like?
Similar, the Jesus on the thing would just be a little bit higher, and there would be a crossbar for him to sit on.
Yeah.
I like Bill Hicks's description. Christians wear crosses around their necks. Do you think if Jesus ever comes back, do you ever think he wants to see a fucking cross?
Oh, I remember that routine. It was one of my favorites
Yeah.
years ago.
Be like going up to Jackie Onassis with a rifle pendant, huh? Just thinking of John, Jackie. Just thinking of John.
Well, would Jesus be a Christian?
Well, just as a gag, let's think about this for a moment.
He wouldn't be, because Christians are defined of those that are followers of Christ and those that are born again, not in the spirit, but not in the flesh, but of the spirit. So I don't think he meets the
Does one
criteria.
follow oneself?
That's what I'm asking. Yeah.
No, Anu, he would be Jewish.
I mean, he was Jewish.
What? Who is that? That's pseudo.
Yes, Sokka, I am here.
This motherfucker here said that Canadians are Americans. Get him.
Who said that, Anu?
Yes.
Well, technically, Sokka, we're from North America, so
That's what I said too. I tried to clarify
Yeah.
that for them. We're North Americans.
yeah, we just got the better half.
I don't know. Chile is pretty nice.
That's in South America, though.
I know, but you said it was the better half. The better. Oh,
Yeah,
you mean
we
we got the better half of North America? Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
I don't know. I think that we have more guns, thus better.
Oh,
So-
do you think you got more guns? We just don't wave ours around.
I don't know.
Right, Sokka?
I'm talking about like just the mere point that we have a much larger population. I think is enough to make.
No.
I don't have to.
Weird
I don't
obsession. We have 3 times as many guns as we have people. It's idiotic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have to take my rifle with me to Tim Hortons to prove how much of a man I am.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's because you don't live in Texas.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I don't actually know anybody personally that again, I probably don't live in Texas, but I don't know anybody personally that carries a rifle around. So,
what, you never see those homosexuals who walk around with their AR-15s at Walmart?
I've never seen that, but that would be cool.
One of these days, I should take advantage of living in Texas and walk outside with a sword. They recently changed things in Texas so you can actually walk around with a fucking sword. I should take advantage of that at some point just for the hell of it.
You should do that.
Walk out the front door, go, look, I've done it. Walk back in.
I gotta tell you, I'm a police officer. I'm a firearms instructor. I'm a card carrying member of the NRA. I live in a state. I currently live in Virginia, which is an open carry state. I don't even see people walking around Walmart, with. I rarely do I even see people walking around with firearms, let alone a rifle.
Yeah. I own a cannon.
Yeah, I've seen it a couple of times. People with sidearms, but it's not. It's not often.
I don't actually own a cannon anymore. I have a Samson now. Oh, you were talking weapons, not printers. Sorry.
Yeah. I had me completely off guard there for like, what?
Okay, let's just go there. I had a Nikon.
Oh, there we go. But icons are evil. I know it's an icon, but still. I know it's an icon, but still. I had to run with it.
And I gotta say, people that do this shit with walking around with rifles, they're fucking 2 sandwiches short of a picnic.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, the thing is, somebody walking around just randomly with a fucking assault rifle would be about as dumb as me actually walking around with a sword. It's just kind of goofy.
And and I do feel bad for the police officers in those states, because hey, I'm a gun owner. That's I understand. I love to shoot, but I don't want to take it out with me. I use it for I use my rifle for going to the range because I don't hunt that much anymore. And I wouldn't even say I use it for home defense because if anybody was breaking into my house, it's pretty far away.
Oh,
it's
Sokka,
not
we've
like
all
my
seen the
pillow.
bear video where the guy tells the bears to please leave his yard.
You would never want to. You would never want to use a rifle for home defense because of the
you really
penetration.
wouldn't.
You'd want either a pistol or a shotgun.
I disagree. I give me an M60 and I think I'm set.
I don't want to be your neighbor. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, one of the things that people need to remember is that you're accountable for every single round. So the more rounds you throw, the more accountable you are.
Well, I mean, I don't have any neighbors, so
that helps.
Ta-da. Yeah, but I mean, ultimately, though, at the same time, like, I probably wouldn't use that anyway because, like, I don't know. I feel like I'd drop it.
It's not practical in that kind of situation, I'd think.
Yeah, I'm not Rambo. I'm not that strong, so there's that. Actually, I don't think even Rambo would be strong enough to hold an M60 in the way he does in the movies. But ultimately, yeah. No, I mean, a shotgun, yeah, would be perfect, I guess. I mean, but a pistol is nah.
A shotgun with the action alone by pumping the forehandle will make someone shit their pants because it's ubiquitous sound. You can't mistake that for anything else. So the sound in and of itself will scare any burglar shitless because, like I said, with a shotgun at that close range, whether it's even with birdshot, they're dead.
Yeah. Well,
so you're saying the best home defense for the standard person breaking into your house is a high-def recording of a shotgun being pumped.
I mean, it's not a stretch. Like when you take a look at like rules of engagement, like cocking the action of a shotgun, depending on what your ROEs are, can be considered along the lines of approaching deadly force. Okay, just writing that action.
Well, yeah, well, I mean, it depends on where your area, where you are, as to whether or not that actually matters. I mean, like legally. I mean, of course.
I figure somebody busts in the window, hears that noise, they're going right back out the same window.
Yeah, I mean, it depends it depends on how much PCP they use. So,
well, hearing was the key part of that, right?
Yeah, that's fair. But I mean, like I know in my state, like I'm more than permitted to use deadly force to an intruder like that. So
castle laws are a wonderful thing.
By contrast, in New Jersey, which where I'm from originally, like I said earlier, I live in Virginia now, but in New Jersey, if it's actually written in the law is if you have an avenue of escape, you must take it before using deadly force.
But I mean, you can just say you did.
Hang on, I need to comment on that right quick. So, G-Man saying come to New Jersey with his weird threatening crap never fucking impressed me, but it impresses me so much less after hearing that.
Yeah, in New Jersey, if someone breaks in your house, it's not presumed that they mean you bodily harm. So if you have a means of escape, you have to take it. It's only if you're cornered and have no avenue of escape can you, in fact, use deadly force.
Man, if they launch a catapult at my castle, that doesn't mean they're trying to kill me.
No, Anu, it means like you live in an apartment, you don't have a balcony. You're on the, 5th, 6th floor. Your only avenue of escape is the front door the perpetrator's coming through.
Yeah, in states like Texas, they change it. They don't even have to come into your house anymore. They can be at the corner of your property, and you decide you don't like the looks of them.
But yeah, I mean, actually, ultimately, that's what my state did as well. Actually, I believe they extended it to also your vehicle here. So, but I mean, ultimately, the logic of the person breaking into your home is not necessarily a threat. It to me just seems like an unnecessary risk that they're putting people in.
What bothers me is that they get people so much worked up so well worked up with all this bullshit gun rhetoric and what have you that you have people that don't know how to fuck to shoot one going out to get guns.
But Texas is also one of the more unique states as well. Is that in most places you are allowed to use deadly force in defense of your defense of harm. Okay, so somebody's going to come around and try to attack you. You genuinely feel for your life. You can kill somebody or use deadly force in an act of self-defense. Texas is one of those states, and that's kind of unique in the fact that they actually have deadly force laws in defense of their property as well. Mm-hmm. So for example, like you go to like a place like New Jersey and you break into somebody's house and you steal their TV, you can't shoot that person. They're not there to hurt you; they're there to steal your TV. In Texas, you can legally shoot that person as they're carrying their TV out as they're carrying your TV out the door.
As they're looking in the fucking window, you can shoot them. I mean, it's absurd. It's a bit overboard, but yeah, I mean, literally somebody could be sitting at the corner of your acre-large property and shoot them, and it's nuts.
Yeah. Sokka, the way you stop someone from stealing your TV is you buy a bigger TV.
With the flat screens, that doesn't work as well anymore.
Yeah, well, they get kind of awkward and ungainly to get through a door and run down the street with.
But I'll tell you, like I used to have the first flat screen I bought, I think was like a 46-inch flat screen, and that fucker was heavy. I have a 60-inch now, and I can carry that thing, one-handed, like under the arm, just kind of hold on to the side.
Yeah, but it's 60 inches. You gotta like maneuver that thing around to get it through a door and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
it's awkward.
I think that when you talk about like the deadly force laws too, I'm trying to remember what state it is, and I think it's Indiana that I think is also the only state out there that says that a civilian can shoot a police officer if they view the police officer engaging in unlawful activity.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to pause the conversation here for 1 second. For J.I. Pearson out in the chat, there's a YouTube content maker that goes by Mr. Deity. Look it up at some point and look at his video on transubstantiation. You'll fucking love it. Mr. Deity, look it up. It's great.
Here it is. Sorry, I had to Google this here. So in Indiana, there's a law that authorizes reasonable force against any any unlawful entry or trespass by police, and even deadly force to prevent seriously bodily injury.
Damn.
Yeah. So make sure you have your warrant out.
Well, I mean, I don't know how I feel about that.
I mean, it's us, the police officer in the room. Yeah. I mean, that shit's, I mean, it's interesting when you see that, because like I mean, let's say that somebody breaks into your home and wants to, here's a question that arises from this. Okay, somebody breaks into your home, and because they want to, cause you bodily harm, or you fear that you're going to get bodily harm from this, and you shoot them. Self-defense. You're allowed to do that. Okay, so now, if a police officer illegally breaks into your home with the intention of hurting you, that they don't have the proper authorization to do that, in Indiana it says you can shoot them.
Oh, that's the one. There we go. Let me find it.
But
sorry.
Does that mean that in any other state that doesn't have a law like that, so what are the laws against shooting a police officer that breaks into your home illegally? I mean, was this a distinction that needed to be made, or is that
Yes, because when I think this was a very it stemmed off of Map v. Ohio. I think the case was
there we go. The video is called The Host. Sorry, posted.
When the police break into your house with a warrant, they have to announce, police, we have a warrant. When you study the case, when you study U.S. jurisprudence, you had to announce that you were the police and that you had a warrant. When the police break in with what's referred to as a no-knock warrant, that's a case where it has to be specified when getting the warrant that this is a high risk seizure, breaking, entering, and seizure, because there's a high probability that the evidence will be destroyed on the announcement of the police entering the residence. And I think that stems from Map v. Ohio, where the police had entered this woman's residence because they were trying to seize pornography, and the woman had demanded, "Where's your warrant? Where's your warrant?" And the police were just flashing a piece of paper. She grabbed the warrant and stuffed it in her shirt, in her bra, in between her breast and her bra, and it turned out later on that it was a bogus warrant. It was just a blank piece of paper. It was nothing. It was an illegal entry. So I think I'm fairly certain it stems from that incident.
Interesting.
That's well, I mean, but hold on. So if it's a bogus warrant, does that mean that the case would have been thrown out anyway?
It was thrown out. Map v. Ohio was overturned because the evidence was seized illegally because there was no warrant.
Ah, got it. Just making sure.
Yeah, the case is the map MAPP v. Ohio, and it had to deal with pornography.
Like what? Like illegal pornography, or just pornography
in general? Because I think the year was 1966.
Oh.
Yeah, back when conservatism, and anti-pornography, was just, the anti-pornography laws were extreme, and and the police, raided this house, and they were just, like I said, flashing just a piece of paper, here's our warrant here.
Damn. Can you imagine back then there being internet and Pornhub, how popular it would be? Just a thought. But yeah, I don't know, I kind of, on one end, kind of understand why, I guess, putting the cops at risk of getting shot might put into perspective for the cop not using excessive force, and maybe give them incentive to want to follow the law better. But on the other side of the coin, I can kind of see where Sock was getting at, and where this issue could end up being one of the situations where it devolves into a misunderstanding on the part of the person that isn't the cop, the arrestee, and that could be
someone breaking in her house. If you own firearms, your instinct is to grab that gun.
Yeah, that could end up creating a massively horrible situation.
Yeah, and now apply that to swatting.
Yeah. Yep. Hopefully nobody in Indiana has ever gotten swatted.
There have been quite a number of homeowners that have been shot because of that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, I watched this one video that I found really disturbing, and it was this guy got swatted while he was in the middle of a stream, and this was several years ago, when it was hip. Yeah. And the cops came in, and this was all on stream, and they came in and pointed the gun at a kid, a little toddler, and I'm just like, what? To me, that was insane. And this guy he was a vet, and the biggest issue is that apparently some hardcore lefty freaking swatted him because of his stance on guns. And I don't know, and then he made some other stream crying, apparently. But later on after that, because he was a vet, came back from freaking Afghanistan or something, and apparently that gave him some PTSD event. But the thing is like, I don't know, like there is this weird debate because I don't want to like shit on cops, you know, like that. I don't want to like say that this is representative of a problem, but I mean, like I don't know, like I can see why the reputation exists for cops.
Well, it is representative of a problem. Poor training in a lot of regions.
Yeah. Well, I mean a problem with cops specifically. I mean, like as a culturally, I guess would be a way to. I don't know if you would consider cops having I don't know if you say there's a cop culture, but I don't know if that makes any sense. But I'm just saying, like, I don't want to say that. I don't know. To me, it's just a weird issue, and I don't really know what angle to come at it from without like trying to demonize one faction or another.
You can demonize the swatters in that case, because fuck them.
Well, I can, yeah, but also the cops. Like, I don't really want to necessarily demonize them either, because there are aspects to that too that I think are that they take too far. And I don't mean just in the case of swatting. I mean in general. Like, for instance, in my area, I live in a very, very tiny little town. Like, there's only 1,000 people in it, and we had these two cops. This was about 4 or 5 years ago, and there was a call from this old lady who was claiming that her husband was beating her, and in that she called 911, and basically they went and beat up her husband. You know, he was in his 80s. Like, they beat the crap out of him, and then it came out that she actually had Alzheimer's, and that this wasn't the first time that she had done this. And she didn't just call 911 in the past either. Like, she would tell all these people this, and the truth was, she wasn't talking about her current husband. She was talking about some relationship she had freaking decades ago, like an ex-husband from decades ago. And so she kept coming back to that with the Alzheimer's event thing. But these cops like made the news because they beat the crap out of this old man that just showed up and immediately beat the crap out of him. Like, the old man was standing in the driveway waiting for them to try and explain himself, and they got out of their cars and immediately beat him up.
And as the sole police officer in this room, I got to say, because I've been a police officer since 2004, and I have seen the gradual trend toward, militarization. Because, like, when I started as a police officer, I just had normal body armor. Now, where I'm in the police department I'm at now, I've got a flak vest with a fucking helmet. And so that kind of militarization and that kind of reactionary, mentality has crept in the past 14 plus years that I've been a police officer. And the concept of critical thinking and that instantaneous, what's the situation as I'm going into, has been not so much taken away from us, but like gradually been eroded away to where this is the information we have, react to it. Not that this is the baseline information we have, figure out what you're going to do when you get there, and what information you're going to get on the fly.
So you're saying you're not looking forward to being issued mech suits?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Mech suits, like Iron Man? Mecha? Oh, never mind.
I'm
Giant fucking robots that you pilot. Oh, never.
Yeah. It's we're only reacting to the information we're given instantly, not that, okay, the information we get is, okay, this is our basic baseline information. Now, when we get on scene, what are we reacting to now? Okay, all right, we get this information. Oh, this woman's being beat. Okay, we get on scene. Wait a minute, the guy's out on the lawn. Wait a minute, what the fuck is going on here? Something's not right here. It's like that kind of like reaction, that kind of thinking on the fly has like gradually been taken away from us.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird because, like, you know, I would have thought the same thing. You know, like I would have got out there. It's like, why is this guy out here? You know, like that's kind of weird. You know, it's like he already knew we were coming,
Yeah,
and he's
I mean,
like
it's not like he's beating his wife on the front lawn. He's out there alone. It's like,
yeah,
okay, even if it was the case, he was beating his wife. It's like he's isolated. You know, go inside the house and find out what the fuck is going on.
Yeah, as opposed to there was a case just what was it, a week or two ago, in which somebody called in and claimed that they were being held captive or some crap like this, and when the father of the kid that was being swatted, his father goes open the door to answer the door, and some cop shot him. Didn't even ask a fucking question. This is, as far as I'm concerned, mostly a training issue.
And again, that goes back to the militarization and the reactionary mentality that has crept into normal policing because of all these high risk incidents that have been, overemphasized in the media, like the active shooter incidences.
yeah.
And so now, as police officers going on scene with very limited information, we're thinking that this is the most dire straight, situation that, we have to have our fingers on the trigger kind of deal. And it's something as a police officer that I have seen over the past 14 plus years that has actually bothered me.
Well, and I want to make it clear though too. Is like I honestly don't think I would make a very good police officer either. So it's like not. I don't want to say I would do any better. Like I would have my weak spots for sure. Like I don't see how police officers can get away with arresting pedophiles without the pedophile disappearing. Like I just don't. I honestly think I'd probably kill them. Like so. Like honestly, I don't think I would make a very good cop. Due to emotional investment in certain regards, so like, but I can see how, like, I heard somebody mention to me a long time ago that counseling isn't really a thing with police officers, and somebody suggested that the counseling should be something that they should pay for, to help alleviate certain behaviors, and then somebody else said. Maybe having psychoanalysis done on potential recruits before they actually are recruited, as to make sure that they're mentally capable. Because somebody made the claim that the primary thing, one of the primary factors for being a cop is more physical than mental. Now, as to support your point about militarization. Which I think is an interesting thought.
On a side note, and not much of a side note at that, there was something that was stated to me a while ago that kind of shocked me, and I want to believe that it's not the case. But I was told that the Dallas Police Department is one of the few departments that actually still does de-escalation training. I'd like to think it's false. I don't know.
Well, yeah, that's interesting. Is he still there?
I don't know.
But yeah, I don't know. Like I don't think I'd make the best police officer, but there are some definite like objective issues that nobody seems to be addressing. And one of those, I think, is kind of like what you said, and I don't know if that's true or not. But
it's just one of those things I don't want to believe. I have no reason to necessarily think it's not true, and the source was somebody that I hold in a high enough regard that I think it's probably the case. I just don't want to believe it, because why would you not teach? Why would you not give de-escalation training? It just doesn't make sense.
I mean, that's part of the job, right?
Yeah.
You would think, but really it isn't. Because, like, for example, like our de-escalation. Let me give you a scenario. Okay, so we get a call. Let's say, for instance, in the former police department I worked at, we get a call about a domestic violence incident where a husband is holding his wife hostage. The concept of a hostage negotiation is a very specialized field, and it's something that I almost went in, a field that I almost actually went, a form of training that I almost went into. So when you get on, we get that call. Hey, my neighbor, there's this huge fight going on between my neighbor and his wife. They're having a huge fight. Something's going on here. We get on scene, and it's something about it's a point where he is holding his wife hostage, and then we'll see that break to where we can engage him, to where either we can incapacitate him or kill him because he's threatening bodily harm, severe bodily harm against his wife. We're going to take that opportunity to take him out because, from our perception, from our perspective, is that we see him. The information we got is like he's presenting potential deadly harm against his wife, and we get there, we see it, and at that specific moment, we see that break. And that we can engage him and either incapacitate him or kill him, not necessarily talk him down. Do you kind of get what I'm trying to say here? Like that kind of.
Yeah, I think so.
That concept of trying to talk him down, like gradually talk him down to where he'll voluntarily surrender. That's something out of like the movie The Negotiator that almost never happens.
Well, the thing that frustrates me is with.
Well, I'm gonna.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
On that point, there is that. It depends. I mean, it's one of those things that you have to pick up with, obviously with the experience, and you have to be able to read the situation there. But one of the things that you take into consideration is that if you have somebody who is, threatening bodily harm to somebody else. Okay, and you show up, and they're talking. They're talking to you. That's a good thing. Having them talking is good because they haven't closed off yet. They're not doing anything else while they're still talking. It's when the talking stops that you have to worry about it. So there's and this is one of the disagreements that we've gone over when we've done our use of force training, is that there's some people that will say, like, listen, if you sit there and talk to the guy for 3 hours, well, he's not doing anything else in that 3 hours other than talking to you. Compared to other people that say, like, listen, you put a half hour in and you got to get to the point where it's just like, okay, time to move on.
The thing that troubles me, though, is that contrary to what Black Lives Matter says, if you look at the statistics, the people that are actually most frequently killed by police officers are actually people suffering from mental illness. And I think that in a lot of those cases, de-escalation training could have saved the day or saved a life, we'll just say. Because in a lot of those cases, somebody simply not being responsive and seeming out of it, there have been many cases of people just being shot for seeming a bit off, frankly, and not responding to direct orders from the police. And I find that really, really troubling. Especially being somebody that suffered from strokes and is also diabetic. Between the two of those, my wife's worried every time I leave the house that I might end up in a daze somewhere and get shot because, oh no, here's basically a paranoid police officer. And I think it's, our culture today that's causing that paranoia.
Well, in relation to you, if I were to be perfectly honest, if I were to encounter you on a traffic stop and you're in a diabetic daze, because like one of the things that's parallel to being in a diabetic daze is someone who's severely under the influence of alcohol. Mm-hmm. And given your size and stature, I wouldn't really perceive you as a threat. But if you read the case of Graham v. Ohio, that's where most of our use of force stems from in the United States, the case of Graham v. Ohio. And it's a very interesting case to review because it really gives a perspective on what the police officer has to rely upon when he's given the information he's given and what he's reacting to. Because hindsight, it's the old cliche, hindsight's 20/20.
Mm-hmm.
But a police officer responding on the scene, given, you have to put yourself in the mind of the police officer, depending on the information he's actually been given, not after the fact. And that's what he's reacting to. And in the case of Graham v. Ohio, what happened is a gentleman was the guy in the car was suffering from a diabetic incident. Forgive me, I've had a little bit too much to drink tonight, so I'm probably slurring.
That's all good. Just keep going.
He ran into a convenience store and said, "Hey, my friend's suffering from a diabetic shock, or like a pharmacy or something. And my friend's suffering from diabetic shock. He needs insulin." And so what happened was the police responding heard about it, an emotionally disturbed person run, and then when he gets on scene, he sees a guy running out of a store and getting into his car and fleeing at a high rate of speed. So when the police officer finally got him to pull over, it was, I'm forgetting the details right now, but it stemmed from a diabetic incident where the police officer's only from what he's seen is a guy is acting crazy. He's leaving a store and he's fleeing away at a high rate of speed. And that's what the police officers were reacting to. The police officers were unaware of the fact that there was a diabetic incident and someone in dire need of insulin. And the reason why the guy was speeding away was he's trying to get to a hospital, some other place where he can get insulin. So again, it's what the police officer is reacting to based upon the information he's given.
I understand that, but at the same point, do you think if they had, training to not only de-escalate situations, but better training to, in light of the stigmatism we have against like mental illness and what have you, if you think that stigma wasn't there as much, do you think that these things would be assessed differently, potentially?
I would have to agree with you. If we can get better training, better psychological training, but again,
but we're not even talking just psychological training, because I said that this is part and parcel of the way society is going this day. In this day and age, is that I think police are put in the situation that they're more on edge because of a lot of things that are going on, as well as the stigma we have against mental illness. I mean, we've been kind of painted in the media as, if you're bipolar, you're going to go around on a shooting spree or whatever, So I wonder if that has an effect on the number of instances like this. That, and I do see a lot of police officers, younger cops predominantly, that are very big on the "you will follow my orders" thing, and when somebody's in that kind of state, they can't.
Right. Yeah. And I actually work with a number of younger police officers. And I get exactly what you're saying. I see it with these younger cops, in that they're reacting and not really thinking. And I don't think it's so much of a stigma. I think that stigma of mental illness is not so much prevalent, but the potentiality of anybody, not just someone who's an emotionally disturbed person, but really anybody at an instant could fly off the handle. And given that so many, because so many people now are classified as needing some kind of mental medication, and how it's so common now. That kind of potentiality for unstableness is so prevalent. that someone could fly off the handle at a moment's notice, and that, like you said, it's like that concept of constantly being on edge has, taken away our ability to think critically and, in a moment's notice, and just simply reacting to what we encounter. Reacting.
I do not envy you
reacting
your
to,
job. I'll say that.
reacting to the stimuli and not thinking about it. And it's kind of a difficult balance to think through what think through what we're seeing rather than reacting to what we're seeing.
So basically, you have to be Andy Griffith.
Andy Griffith had the edge on everyone because he knew all his neighbors.
Yeah, more or less, yeah.
And he didn't need a gun. He had Barney for that.
Oh, God. Ugh. Yeah.
And as a firearms instructor, I got to say, there are people I work with who I would not want side by side with me in a gunfight.
Mm-hmm.
There are people that I work with should not be police officers. I am sorry to say.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me at all, honestly. I mean, the thing is, I've, over the course of my life, came across plenty of different officers, whether it just be listening to them out of coffee or what have you. And a lot of the people that seem to get into that line of work seem to get in for the wrong reasons.
Yeah. Again, in the 14 years I've been a police officer, I've worked in 3 departments because I'm a federal police officer, and I've gone from a couple police because one police department closed down, and then I transferred. And then after the second one, I transferred because it was better pay. So I've encountered a number of people, and there have been a handful where it's like I've looked at them. It's like I don't want to be anywhere near you because you're a fucking sociopath.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard older cops scolding younger police officers. Actually, I should say older cops. I could go with that. Older cops that are a little burned out dealing with the younger ones, and the younger ones are all gung ho, acting like they're just waiting for some perp that they can plug.
Yeah.
And it's like, what the hell's wrong with you? Why did you become a police officer? This guy's here to protect and serve. What are you here for?
Yeah.
But I'd rather deal with some older, burned out cop normally than one of these younger guys any day of the week. In part because they've seen enough that they're more likely to just cut you a little bit of a break because, these are the ones that walking around Boston, for example, they see somebody walking down the street smoking a joint. They're like, what are you doing smoking that in public? And to tell them to put it down on the ground and stomp it out and grind it into the dust, as opposed to some younger cop that's going to draw a gun on them. Oh, you're smoking it. Yeah, so what are you doing, man?
Yeah. No, it's like I hear I understand exactly what you're saying because, like I said, I've worked with a couple of guys like that, and I'm not even that old. I mean, I'm only 37, so. And a couple of these younger cops that I work with, it's like, hey, this is not as extreme as you think it might be.
Yeah.
Don't be so. I'm a cop now. I must enforce the law. It's like, no, let's take in a perspective on what you're enforcing and why you're enforcing it.
Yeah. This has been a fun conversation. I am starting to fade. And we just had either a Google Quake or a couple people drop out. I don't know which, so I'm probably going to be calling this relatively soon. But it's been an interesting discussion.
Oh, it's nice to talk to you again. It's been a long time since I've been
Yeah, man. Oh, I do have one question for you, and this is almost a stupid, irrelevant question.
Mm-hmm.
Because in a situation where my blood sugars drop too rapidly or what have you, and I'm having a hard time responding. Is there an easy way to try to let a potential police officer know what's going on when I'm having problems communicating?
Or let's say, for instance, you're having a diabetic incident. Do you have a card on you to indicate, or like a hand bracelet or something to indicate that you're diabetic?
I haven't been wearing the bracelet because it was uncomfortable. We've been talking about getting a new one.
Okay. All right. If you let's say for instance, even if you get like something like a laminated card, like a red card, that says medical like a red card with yellow lettering, it says medical emergency. Hold that out. Indicate something that you have, that you're going into like some kind of like diabetic shock. You have seizures, something to indicate, just to give some kind of indication that to the police officer that you have a serious medical condition. Cool. Even if something like, let's say like a necklace, with a medical cross on it,
And just try to figure out how to do it in a non-threatening way when you're a little jerky.
Yeah.
Just put a white cloth on a stick.
I don't know how well that would translate per se, but yeah, that's good advice to live by, because this is something that really scares my wife whenever I'm going out someplace. Because what happens if I drop out and somebody says, "Oh no, there's somebody acting nuts," and because really they're reacting to whatever the call says initially.
Yeah.
And that's part of where the concern comes in. So I will have to make a point of getting a better bracelet, a new one, because this old one is good. When we initially ordered it, it was a little bit small, so it doesn't fit right in that. And there's more health concerns now, so we're talking about getting a new one.
Yeah, and like even something like let's say a custom made dog tag. I mean, if you go to like, let's say for instance, like there's a website called keyring.com that you can go to and get a custom made bracelet, or necklace, a metal plate that that you can have engraved with like certain pertinent information, diabetic, something like that. So yeah, if that's something that because I know a little bit about your medical history, about your seizures and your severe diabetes, and that something like that, even like I said, even just like with a necklace, just having a lanyard with a card around with a card attached that says severe diabetic, severe medical,
Yeah, being out of it and being very skinny and what have you, I'm sure that there's a lot of assumptions that could be made in my case.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you very much. That was incredibly helpful. And on that note, I am going to actually call it a night because I do have to get up in a few hours.
All right. Good night, man.
And let me take this sucker offline.
All right. Well, nice meeting you.
Yeah, good meeting you as well. Nice to have you. And they click the